Welcome back to Why Blank Lost. I'm David Bloomberg, and this week's Survivor episode was all about two things: rock draws and determining who the biggest threat was. So it's perfect that my co host Jessica Lewis is an expert on one, and our special guest, James Jones, is an expert on the other.
Yay for us!
Really?
Oh God, I don't know if I really want to be the expert on rock draws, but son of a gun, I guess I kind of am.
I mean, you're one of very few, so yeah,
Yes.
you're
Not. Can we just get rid of the rock draws already? Come on, just stop it. Just stop it.
Oh, we'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that. But I do want to explain a little bit for those who may not know why I singled out James in terms of being an expert on threats. This is a topic that he has discussed on Twitter and elsewhere, and he and I have talked repeatedly about this ever since his season. So everyone, you should definitely be looking forward to the sixth rule because
listen,
gonna be
I was
lit.
actually I was in my head when prepping for this, thinking to myself, I can't wait till we get to Rule 6 because James is going to be like, "Here we go, I got this." Yeah.
But of course, we can't jump to that because we have a process to go through first. We will compare Moriah's game to my rules for winning that I originally wrote way back after season one and have been updating ever since, using all the non-spoiler information available to us from what we saw on TV, interviews, social media, and secret scenes. The newest version of the rules can, of course, be found on our dedicated page at robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed and clicking on the link bubble for the Survivor rules. But before we get to all of that, James, how are you?
I am doing great. I feel like this is a long time coming.
It is.
I feel like I listened to the podcast for a while, especially since before I went on the show. So I've been a long time listener. And I'm excited to, communicate, probably agree a little bit, debate a little bit, and and see where everything stands. But so I'm definitely excited. So when I remember first hearing about the rules, and I wrote my rules, they're very extensive, and I didn't listen to any of them. But I think like 7 is a good amount.
Yeah.
But I feel like having a set of rules is a set of tenets, as I call them, tenets.
Yes.
Is a good way to think about the game before you go in, and just going through those tenets each day is probably something that's very helpful, truth be told, if you do plan on playing. So
yeah, and just so everyone understands why it was a long time coming. We were just trying to get schedules matched up, and then we'd be like, "Oh, we could have you this week." Oh, nope, he's doing this other podcast this week, and and it just and so but we finally pushed through and we got it. So
yes,
yay for calendars.
We're trying to break the podcast record too, Marianne style. No, we're not. Just
no.
Jokes, very much jokes, just jokes.
So, before we get to the rules themselves, we always have some other things to discuss from this episode. And the first thing that I wanted to bring up is an interesting twist I noticed in the most recent 2 challenges, putting everybody on the puzzle this time and putting everybody on the slingshot the previous time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Rob mentioned this too on one of his podcasts, but I wanted to bring it up just because I like it. It is, we always talk about the puzzle as an equalizer, and I know Jessica just loves a challenge that ends in a puzzle.
My favorite.
To me, this is a further equalizer because you can't just pick your 1 or 2 puzzle people, or you can't just say, Hunter, go shoot that slingshot 3 times, or whatever. And in this particular episode, it could have helped out the smaller team. As it turned out, well, the expected team still won. But it at least made it a challenge, as the smaller group got within supposedly a couple of puzzle pieces at one point. Right. I think one of the main problems is Hunter isn't just a physical threat, but a puzzle threat too. So, he was able to just jam right through that last part.
Yeah. And when you build them in practice ahead of time, you have a little bit of an edge on other people.
In Hunter's defense, And in Carson's defense as well, you should practice these puzzles. Like you should buy these puzzles, you should practice these puzzles. Like you should like even like before I went on the season, like I went through every single new era puzzle and took a picture. Just so I had, before they do the puzzle, they show a fast way of putting the pieces together. So I literally had a video of all the pieces and how fast they put them together. So when we got that turtle puzzle, I knew the outside rim was the outside rim. I was able to say put the shells in the middle, and these were these spots. So like you are like you have to do that if you're going on the show. Once you get that phone call, you need to study the puzzles. Like this is kind of now studying the logos. I don't know. Like that's a lot.
I listen. We might have a little bit of a debate here on the puzzle thing, because the thing that I don't like is that, to me, the one thing that was so great about Survivor was the unknown, that you didn't know what was going to be thrust upon you. You didn't know what was going to be happening, and you had to prepare for everything and anything, right? And so we've kind of lost that by this repetitiveness with Fiji, because they are repeating things so often. And it really, I think it's turning it into more of just like a game show, because everyone knows what the Showcase Showdown looks like, right? Everyone knows what like these particular types of game shows that we see, how they're structured and what this means, and how do you play Plinko and all of, and all of these things. And so that's the part that I always loved about Survivor, is that it was the unknown. You didn't know what was going to happen. And so there, you could prepare physically, you could prepare mentally as much as you could, but you shouldn't be able to memorize puzzles. And then when you see, you go, that's the puzzle I memorized right there. And so I know how to do it. And I'm not saying that you're wrong, because this is what they're doing. Yes, if you are going on to Survivor, knowing that they have been repetitive and they've been doing things over and over again, you 100% have to at this point, because that's what they're going to keep doing. But as a viewer and as someone who has watched the show since the beginning, I just don't like it. I want it to be new. I want it to be fresh. I don't want it to be a repeat. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, it's the difference between what a player should do and what production should do. A player should practice, memorize as much as they can these puzzles. Production should not reuse the puzzles over and over again. And I mean, the thing is, you can still, even if it's not the exact same, you can still figure certain things out, like you said, James, if you've studied them. And I think you should. I mean, you can practice walking on a balance beam. You can practice landing sandbags on a little, something above you. You can practice knocking down, things with sandbags, or throwing balls, or shooting a big slingshot, probably a little more than most people can do. But all those things can be practiced. So, memorize the puzzles too.
I think that the tough part is for me, and I agree with the fact that I benefited from actually seeing the puzzles and understanding and that stuff too. But then also I feel like sometimes you don't have to be so grandiose. And I think that Survivor has gotten less physical because they don't want people to get injuries. And
oh my God, yes.
But this is actually part of the game. Like some of my favorite challenges where somebody holds a pole and you're pulling someone off the pole. Each person has I feel like they're trying to take away the injury risk, and I get all that and I understand all that. But at the same time, some of those physical, you push someone off, it's like from a game show standpoint, is when you're taking away the physical aspects of the show, saying, oh, if fire is less important. I think fire is important. Other people don't, but I think fire is important. When you're taking away the physical stuff, but then you're also you're making the mental stuff easier. You're skewing the game away from physical people, which is fine. But then if you're going to do that, long term, then that's a different show than when you have people on a pool and people have different strengths and different weaknesses, and physically.
And a lot of that too, James, is there's a mental component there. Like, how bad do you want it when you're doing those physical challenges where it's stamina and you just have to stand there as long as you can? It doesn't matter who's necessarily stronger than the next person. It can really come down to your mental strength and where you are and how bad do you want this. Those are my favorite challenges, the ones that really push people physically and mentally. And that's why I love Australian Survivor, because they seem to be more geared towards those types of challenges still, where it is that mental strength in addition to the physical strength as well. To me, those are the best challenges possible. So I think, yeah, 100%. I'm with you on that. The physical challenges need to come back, please.
Give me a food challenge. Make me eat a dirty eye.
Yes!
Like there's certain things from a like mental standpoint where it's like,
yeah,
it doesn't have to be this big grandiose thing. It's like, no, there's an eyeball here. Who wants
Yeah.
this $1 million?
here's a
Eat this
moving
eyeball.
larva. Eat that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that stuff to me is just as good television as, you know, putting people up, you know, a big set piece. Like maybe
Yeah.
if there's just one pole and you're playing cornhole, like if you're playing
Yeah.
cornhole, musical chairs, like it doesn't actually matter. But it's kind of
Right.
like, you know, that's just my thought process, my feelings. And I love Survivor. Like I need to get a VPN to watch Australian Survivor, and so I can get there. But I like sometimes that being a physical person, and I'm not a big person. I'm like 5'8". Like I'm not that big, but people are looking at me like I'm this big athletic threat. I'm like 5'8". I'm 36. I'm old. Like I'm the oldest guy here next to Gabler.
Please
Like,
don't say you're old. Come on.
Yeah.
Correct. I apologize. I'll take that back.
You could
But
go,
yes,
but they
David,
could,
I do think it was nice that they made everybody be involved for sure.
Yes.
I do think that
Yeah.
that was
I like
that was
that.
definitely good to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get everyone involved so it's not one person doing everything.
Right.
And if someone fails, you can blame them. Like I feel like that's also
Yes.
a great part. Like I feel like yes, make everybody do something so you can't blame everybody. Like I feel like that's an equal
Yeah.
opportunity.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, James, speaking of, you know, Australian Survivor and some of the challenges they have there, they had a charades challenge. Okay. Now it was a few years back, but it was hysterical. It's still talked about today. So
That's incredible.
But all right. Well, on a completely different topic, I want to discuss how Venus tweeted out a lot of things after the episode.
A lot of
so
things.
much that I was surprised it was allowed. But hey, I'm in favor of it. Keep it coming. I love it.
Me too. I love this. I love the tea.
Now, we will discuss some of these things later in Appendix A, and probably some of them in a Why Venus Lost podcast at some point. But what I want to address now kind of sets the tone, and that's why I'm talking about it now, because Venus tweeted, "Can I tell you all that the reason Charlie voted me was because I gave him advice that Moriah was likely going to use her shot in the dark, and we should think of that potential threat. So," and then all caps, "he took my advice to him and voted me." But here's the thing. Charlie clearly saw this and tweeted, "Reason I voted Venus. 1, everyone told me she was saying my name. 2, I knew Mo was playing her shot in the dark way before Venus. Who told me? Mo did. So to protect myself and Maria from a ricochet vote, I voted for the person saying my name up and down the beach. That's it." Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up is, like I said, it sets the tone, because Venus is seeing things only from her perspective and isn't considering that there could be others. In this particular case, Charlie had a direct response to this by pointing out that she was not, in fact, the one who told him. From her point of view, she was, because she didn't know about the other conversations
right.
that he had. So, and then he knew she was spreading his name. So, of course, he would want her out. And again, I mention this now because while this specific instance didn't impact on the vote, I want the stage already set when we start talking about some of the other things she said later in Appendix A in terms of her perspective versus the perspective of everyone else in the game. Because not everything is this clear, this cut and dry.
Right.
And this one is. So I think it's a good thing to put out there and say, we've got perspective issues here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the unfortunate thing that happens with the game is that perception becomes reality, right?
Mhm.
We've talked about that a lot. So if that's what people are seeing, that's what people are believing. But that doesn't mean it's always true. And yeah, and rumors abound, and people aren't honest when they play Survivor. So it's not like you're going to have all of the pieces of the information you need to make a decision. You have to take as much as you believe to be true and kind of say, well, this is where I'm going with that, and this is what I'm doing. And yes, then you find out things like this after the fact when you're allowed to apparently talk on Twitter about what happened in the game, even though I didn't think you were allowed to do that. Right, James?
We want it to
I
continue.
mean, I had a lot of tweets I wanted to let off, but for me, I like it. I feel like this is how what Survivor is, right? Where everybody
Mhm.
has different perspectives, and you're getting an insight into the game where you only have your perspective, right? So
Right.
from your perspective, you're playing the game, but playing the game, having experience, understand where someone doesn't understand that the person that gave them information already gave you that information, so they're coming to you, and you know that they're plotting.
Right.
Like, I feel like this is actually how Survivor works from a
Right.
information and communication standpoint, where from the outside looking in, this could be also a view to producers, but the producers may not show Charlie talking to Moriah, and they didn't show Charlie. Like, so you had these conversations happen, and you're like, oh, so I feel like this is the perfect kind of understanding of the back end where, oh, how come this person didn't do this, or why did this person do this? There's so many things happening on the back end from relationships that you may not see as a player, where why someone's name give you resistance. Like, oh, I want to vote this person out. And it's like, no one's trying to vote out Carla.
Yeah.
You're like, why is no one trying to vote out Carla? It's like, what's happening? She's a clear threat. And it's like, well, Carla's very insulated, but you don't understand who she's insulated with. So when you're communicating, oh, I'm talking to this person, that person is immediately coming back to like, oh, well, they try to say this.
Yeah.
So now when you have that conversation, you're coming from it like, I'm having this conversation. They're coming from it, I know what you said. You're having this conversation. Now I'm sussing out information to further my game or to bury you or to take mental notes. I think that's kind of what this exchange is demonstrating of how things happen on the island versus how they're shown from a production standpoint, which is fine either way. I think it's just a good, if you're an objective listener and of information, it's a good way to think about the game where you can take in information, understand, oh, why did this person do this, and just think a little more into it instead of jumping to the first conclusion about a thought.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, information is really power when you're out there. It really is, but you do have to work through it and sort through it as best you can.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest recent seasons where this came up and people couldn't or barely could say anything was 44. When on TV, it looked like, if you were just watching the TV show, it looked like Jamie and Lauren were completely clueless and just doing whatever anyone said. And finally, one of them, I don't remember which of them, finally, one of them,
it
was Lauren, tweeted something like, no, this is not the way it happened. You're not seeing, you could tell it was pent up. And even she didn't go into any of this detail. And that's when Jessica and I are like on the podcast, like, something is going on here. We're not exactly sure what, but something is going on here that, is more. And we gradually built the picture up until finally interviews. But even before then, we were like, they are not just a couple of idiots here. They're being led along or something else is happening here. And so, I can only imagine, sitting there being like, I'm being made to look like I'm a fool. And, they're completely cutting out the part where, yes, was I conned? Yes, I was conned. It happens on
and
Survivor,
I would have appreciated when they showed that I was being conned at one point and they didn't. And then you look like a fool, right? You're like, that's not what happened. But they also have to make a TV show out of it. So it's hard.
And that's the good Survivor, like one of good Survivor players that you don't see on television, where if someone feels a certain way, it's because a player is making them feel a certain way. Just like if someone feels on the outs, it's because players are making them feel on the outs. But like, say someone feels like they're on the end, but they're really on the outs. That's good Survivor play, but it's hard to kind of say. Like, if someone's on the tribe, it's like, I'm running the show, but they're on the bottom. that's really good Survivor play by everybody else on that tribe,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And then when that person watches the show, they're like, God darn it.
But
That I was doing so much better.
But if you don't show that, it's like that person has the bravado, but you don't show the conversation. The person saying, "Oh yeah, we're good, we're tight."
Yeah.
Oh, so, like you don't show that those conversations that make why that person feels that way is like that's what happens. But you have to kind of read into that and assume, and that's kind of thing. Once you if you're a big fan of the show and you've seen all the outcomes, you have to understand. Listen, like there are things happening below the scenes, and they're not casting horrible players anymore. Like the baseline for a bad player now is so much higher than it was back in the day. I know it's about to say
maybe one or two per season, but yeah.
Less than half before I haven't seen the show.
Less than several, we'll just say.
Well, I think it's a good thing to make, to note now, because they are casting people who are super fans or more fans of the show. Whereas at the beginning, when Survivor was old school, some people were like literally sitting on a bench and had never seen Survivor before, but someone from casting saw them and went, "You'll be perfect for Survivor," and put them on the show. They don't do that anymore. And so I think that it's noted now much more than it was before. So the fact that like this actually came up this episode when Q was like, "So how long have you been watching? And who did you like as a player?" I mean, like those are conversations that just didn't happen in old school Survivor, where some people had never even seen the show before, but they're like, "Oh, Survivor, I'll go live on an island. This will be great," and had no idea what the show was about. So it's a much different playing field now.
Yeah.
Like Aubry, big threat that scares me. I mean, we'll get there. Let me be.
We'll get there. Yeah, we'll get to that. So, now there were, of course, other things going on. I'll, put some of them on my TikToks at David Bloomberg TV. Is there anything else that either of you wanted to discuss before we move on to our next segment?
Our next segment.
So let me.
Because I want to complain about the whole mergeatory again, but I don't know if now's the time to do that.
Oh man. Oh mergeatory.
Well, what do you want to complain about it?
I just would prefer that they don't do this split where you have 7 that are safe and 6 that are not. I'm like, let's not do that. Let's not do that.
Let's increase the tension. Let's have people pick teams. Let's have it where you have to knock when you get a correct answer, you knock someone's thing down. Like, let's make people draw lines.
Oh, those challenges where you used to like have to shoot people's targets out and you got to pick like you got each person had 3 targets. Oh, those were the best because it really upset people. That was fun. That's
what you want to do at Merge, because you want to break up this whole like if you want people to break up, you say, all right, cool, you're going to break up and actually have to make some choices. When people can hide behind not having to vote and then not voting, and it could be 2 votes where they don't have to show their cards, and 2 people that do, which is breaks of the game. But for me, I feel like picking teams. Oh, you're picking on your team. Oh, you're gonna hit my thing down first. Oh, like those type of things, those little agitations and little things, like. I think that adds the fluidity of the game, especially when people don't know each other. It's like you meet each other for a day. Oh, we got competition. Teams of 2. Yeah. Oh, you gotta knock another team of 2's thing off.
Right.
Like the first 2 teams win immunity, the other 6 people or 8 people are like. There's ways to do it where it's not just like a rock draw with no type of. And it's the first time it happened, and I remember watching it. And I was just like, yo, like. And this challenge also showed that communication was way better than brute strength, because the orange team was really communicating really well, and that's the crux of challenges a lot of times, more than brute strength.
Right.
However, it's just kind of like I just think that agency aspect and like cranking up the tension, like let's crank up the tension, let's crank up the adversity, because you're still allowed to stay in these tribal shells for this mergeatory, and even after we're as 2 people. You're shooting out targets, and like I feel like that adds tension. And I like that type of stuff. That's just me. So,
me too.
Well, yeah, as it happens, the next segment is Jeff Probst is wrong about blank, which has to come back again this week. And it is a topic that you guys have already touched on. It's near and dear to your heart, Jessica. Rock draws.
Rock draws.
In fact, he really rubbed it in because this episode of Jeff's podcast is named Drawing Rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And he says he enjoys them because they're dangerous fun. Dangerous fun. What do you think,
fun.
Jessica? Yeah. No.
Listen, okay, I will say this. There is a difference between the rock draw that I did and the rock draws that are creating the division in a team like this for mergeatory. I will say, and James, I'm sure can speak to this, whenever you are going out to a challenge and you have to, they will literally have you draw a rock prior to, so they know what position to put you in. Like if it's something that's an individualized spot, that's how they kind of designate spaces. So there is that component to the drawing as well. But I do think that in situations like this, unless it's coming down to it's a tie vote and people can't agree, you are forcing them to have to do something incredibly terrible and drastic, and that's drawing rocks. That's different. Did I do it? Yes. Was it awful? Yes. Did I have to? Yes. So we've already addressed all of those things. But in this type of situation, when you have a group of 13 people, do the picking teams thing. Force them to have to put it on blast who they are working with, who they want to work with, who they don't care to work with. Have them fight over Hunter. I can remember when we did the pick teams for one of our challenges, I wanted to hide behind the people I was standing next to when I saw who were the captains and how the teams were being divided, because I was like, please don't pick me. Please don't pick me. And then she picked me. And I was like, God darn it. Now I'm on that. And we got our asses handed to us. I mean, it was terrible. It was awful. But it was a choice. And I just feel like the picking of the teams, it just adds so much, because then of course there had to be some justification as to why you chose the team you chose, because now you look like you have no idea what you're doing because you picked everybody who's like this tall and like not brute strength, and this is like a brute strength challenge, and it makes people have to like justify what they did. So please, let's not have a rock draw decide people's potential to win $1 million.
I Jessica, as a you are a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer. You just the argument you articulated was beautiful. It made sense. It's not much I can add. It's more just like this agency. Like I think agency adds tension, and I'm anti rock draw. I feel like I got the bad end of the rock draw. I got the worst rock draw of my season. Call it being scarred. I mean, you're more scarred than me, Jess, so you should be. I think any other rock draw, I'd have been fine my season, but people can debate that. I think I would have been good, but here nor there. It's just kind of like people want to have control, people want to have agency, and I feel like those things allow them to do so. And from a game mechanic standpoint, it just makes more sense. Where I look at the challenge. I have an ally that people view me as a good challenge person, right? Now I have an ally that may not be viewed as a good challenge person. If that's my number one, right? Now I have to make a choice. My immunity or my ally that can't jump. And
or even more than that, let's say they were doing a schoolyard pick for splitting the group for this challenge, knowing one group would be vulnerable and one would not. Now, first of all, we still hate that 7 people are safe. But if you're going to continue doing that, well, then you have to look at it and go, okay, do I want someone? I mean, if you're one of the Nami, you probably want to pick Venus because you know that Venus is most on the outs among your tribe mates. And so there's different. Yeah, so there's different reasons for picking different people.
Right.
And so there's just a lot more actual strategy instead of this nonsense that Jeff wants to do.
And you can literally put your own game on blast because people will see what you are doing.
Right.
And people will talk about the choice that was made and why did so and so pick me?
Mhm.
You know, Venus would have been asking, like, why'd you pick me first? Yeah.
That was crazy because I immediately thought devious things that I wanted to do but couldn't do. It's like imagine just picking it. You know you're good, right? So you pick a losing
Yeah.
team with everybody and all the options. You're
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm gonna help all my friends out, put them on a great team. I'm not drafting them. I'm drafting everybody that I think is going to help me lose the challenge, knowing that I'm going to be good. Like it just all the strategic stuff can just pop up. Like
Yes.
you know, like you could have naturally. Charlie could have won and naturally chose this team,
Yeah.
saying that
Yeah.
I'm going to be good, knowing that I'm covered on this other side. Right?
Yeah.
That could have been a natural outcome, which would have been felt more like a choice in a decision as opposed to just
Right.
this rock show happened, and we're like, well,
Yeah.
if the other team loses, it's kind of just like, you know, like they should win. That's an all.
Even Jeff was like, "Oh, we know who's gonna win this one."
Yeah.
I mean, come on, Jeff. It's terrible. It was terrible.
Yes.
Ooh.
All right. Well, before we move on to how Moriah did, we do want to mention that the rules we're about to discuss are available in a shorter and much more colorful version in poster form. So go to robhaswebsite.com/yxlostfeed, scroll down to the poster, click on it, order it, buy it, have it sent to you. Then
I just ordered a fresh new batch.
Oh wow!
So yes, I had to get I mailed out two and I sent a little
third printing. Look at that.
Yes, third printing. I sent a little letter to each of the individuals who purchased because the posters that I had to send them, I was like, I always look at them to make sure everything is perfect. And these ones there was a little bit of a wrinkle in each of them, but I didn't have any other options. So I sent them a signed photograph of myself and I apologized and said, if you want a different one, let me know. I'm getting a fresh batch.
How come you didn't send a signed photograph of me?
Well, I don't have any. If you sent me some, then we could do that.
No, nobody wants that. Nobody needs that.
I'm sure they do, David. Listen, nobody wants my grubby, dirty pictures. You remember what I looked like on the show? It was terrible. Oh my God, I'm embarrassed for myself still.
No, they want you to sign the poster.
Yeah.
You are a survivor inspiration to a lot of people, so they want
that was so sweet.
You made it further than me.
Yeah.
You made it further than me. You're my inspiration.
Oh, you're talking about me being inspiration? Oh my God. Well, thank you. I thought you were talking about David. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm glad I'm an inspiration. It was an incredible opportunity, so that's good if I can.
Give yourself some flowers. I think that's an inflection point in the game where where the game was at a point where people respected loyalty a lot, where you couldn't just at some point you couldn't flip and win the game and expect people to get your votes. Where I feel like, new era where it's like, oh, that's a good gameplay. Like, well, it could be good gameplay, but also just know someone doesn't have to vote for you. Like, this whole like you can backstab somebody and they're supposed to be your friend and vote for you for $1 million is a new concept. This is very new.
Oh yeah.
This is
it definitely is.
Very new. This isn't like so I feel like these are things that get lost when you kind of think about the bigger things where it's like if I'm your number one, and I feel like these things aren't talked about in a new era, especially where I'm your number one, you backstab me, or we're in the alliance, you backstab me. You see people get to the end that are part of these big alliances aren't winning. So let's just parking lot that. We'll dropping that off. Okay. And we can just keep going. My bad.
All right. Just want to mention before we keep going, you can scroll down and get the poster on a t-shirt and also the checklist on a t-shirt. So again, that is at robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed.
And I promise, wear it to Ponderosa if you ever on the show, and they won't vote you out.
Oh my God.
You mean pre-game Ponderosa? Yes. You'll make all sorts of new friends. That's right. Nobody will think you're strategic.
Everyone will be writing that down going, that person has to go first.
Yeah.
Like, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All those little notes you write about people.
Yeah. Also, right along. And then another shirt you should wear is Aubry is my favorite. That's definitely.
Aubry should definitely start selling those. That would be great for her. Yes. She needs merch. Aubry is my favorite.
All right. Well, despite the fact that Moriah was on the outs of her Siga vote just before the mergeatory, Her tribe tried to keep an appearance of unity rather than immediately throwing her under the bus like Nami did to Venus. Yet somehow it backfired and caused the exact opposite result, as Moriah was targeted while Venus overplayed even more but stayed safe. How did this all happen? And what role did Moriah, being an Aubry fan, play? It's time to figure out why Moriah lost. All right. Well, the first and most important rule is to scheme and plot. And before we even discuss what happened in this episode, we need to look back, especially to last week, because Moriah's position going into mergeatory can be traced back to her position within Siga. So when I say last week, it's actually all the last weeks. She was a part of the Charlie's Angels alliance, but as far as we know, didn't have any real side alliances besides that, much like we discussed regarding Gem last week. And also, much like Gem, that meant there wasn't anyone willing to stick their neck out for her when the time came. I know some have said she was very close with Gem, but Gem previously said that wasn't the case. And Moriah told Mike Bloom, I thought that Maria and Gem were very close. Maria thought Gem and I were very close. And Gem thought Maria and me were close. So it's this weird circle of no one knows where we stand. Of course, they found out where everybody stood at that vote, and Moriah stood on the outside. She had voted for Ben because she thought that was the plan, and she noted in interviews that although she really liked Ben, he wouldn't talk strategy with her. She also noted that she and Tim weren't on great terms from that standpoint either. So she was clearly in trouble coming into mergeatory.
Yeah, and one of the things that she talked about too that I thought was interesting was almost the inability for her to even play because they were winning or they were coming in second. And so they weren't forced to have to really, draw that line in the sand yet or make those hard decisions and really see where you fall. And then when it did happen, she found out where she fell and it was on the other side of the line. So I think that that's another issue with the 3-tribe dynamic where you have such an inability to play the game early on, like right away. Like you're not forced to have to when you only are never going to tribal or going to tribal once right before the merge.
Yeah.
So, slight disagreement. I feel like it's just harder to play the game when you're not going to tribal and you have I feel like they don't show that, but you have to play the game. Like you have to set up those relationships. Like if you're in a group of 4 and you don't have a 2 and you don't have a 3, you're not playing the game. Like you have to think,
for sure, yeah.
Like so you're playing. Like my thought process is, I have experience in not going to tribal. You're not going to tribal, but what you're trying to do is make sure the seeds are sown that you know who the targets are. Right. Everybody knows who the targets are. So when you do lose, right, you get back to the beach. Right. You know what's happening, and I feel like that is part of the game, but it's also a harder game to demonstrate and a harder game to play where it's a relationship driven game where you're actually like saying, okay, in my head, does this person really want to play with these 2 people? And if they don't really want to play with those 2 people, then that puts me in a good position here. How am I moving there? So yes, you're not voting people out, but that is the part I think that people are missing from just looking at the game, that just watch it from binging, is like the social aspect of the game, but building those relationships where trust clusters are formed, where Ben and Tim are cool. So they know within whatever 4, they got a 2. Charlie and Maria, they have their 2. So even if your 2 are in the outs, you have someone that you're building trust with, as opposed to you don't have anybody who have a 4. What's happening is you're not seeing the game that's being played, right?
Right.
So Philip Shepard, Boston Rob rules. You're 4-6. You get your 4, you get your 3, you get your 2. Like that's where your mind has to always be. And if it's not there,
And I feel like she, for whatever reason, never got there. And I do think the fact that she didn't know who that 2 was, she didn't know who that 3 was. She's part of the Charlie's Angels, but doesn't feel like she can trust Charlie. Like what? I mean, like, so how are you like part of that core group if you don't feel like you can actually strategize with him? Like, then you're not part of that 4. So I think that she seemed to be putting a lot of emphasis on the fact that they never had to really play. That's what she was saying, was we never really had to play the game. Well, no, you're absolutely correct, James. You have to play regardless of what's going on. If you're going to tribal council or not, You need to be creating those relationships and those bonds. So when you do have to go to tribal, it's not a question. You know who you're voting for. And she was maybe just became complacent because they didn't have to, I guess.
Well, I mean, you have to play, but the problem is you don't know if what you're playing is actually successful until you go vote. She thought she had a solid 4 alliance. Maria, I mean, even look at Maria. Maria thought she and Charlie could go either way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we discussed this last week. But then when it actually came time and Maria was like, okay, the Charlie's Angels Alliance wants to go after Ben. And Charlie was like, yeah, but I don't. Yeah.
Right.
And so everything was hunky dory until it came time for the rubber to meet the road. And so it's kind of like you think you could think you have these alliances.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it comes back to that whole issue we were talking about, different perspectives of, you know, who really is doing what.
Exactly.
Now, moving forward to, you know, this week's episode, we did see Ben and Tim deflect some attempts to get the rest of the safe people to name a Siga name. Eventually, of course, they caved and, you know, gave up Moriah because, well, like I said, she didn't have anyone.
What do y'all think about this? Like,
okay,
Jessica, but like, you don't have to say anything. What's this whole like you have to give up a name thing? Like,
listen, I was fascinated. Yes,
what?
I was absolutely fascinated. But it was like, it's like you show me yours, I'll show you mine, kind of thing. And it was like, what? Like you can certainly just have conversations in general, but then this idea that like now we're going to hold it against you because you don't want to throw a name out there. I mean, if there's one thing we've learned, especially with the new era, and I know that this existed. Dropping that name first, that's a risky thing to do. You know, if you're willing to like offer someone up on a silver platter. I mean, if I would have been Siga, I would have been like, oh, you want Venus to go? Done.
Except
like,
they turned it on Siga and they were like, now you name someone. And I think a lot of this goes back to the Journey 6 alliance within the other things, because I don't think Tim wanted to risk pissing off Q and Hunter, you know, his supposed secret allies, by refusing to work, you know, with them or appear to work with them.
Oh, I just would have doubled down on Venus, though. I would have been like, well, listen, let's talk about Venus and just keep the Venus.
Except
because
they
then
kept
it's
pushing.
like,
I think they did. I think they kept trying to. And I think they were expecting it to go more like when Gabler made his pronouncement.
That's how it should go. He was like,
done.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's why I thought Venus. I thought that's why Venus was going to go. But I think the part. Well, we'll get to more of this. But I think a lot of it was the Yanu bidding war. Like, who can get Yanu to our side? Who can convince Yanu?
Yeah.
And you know, so they were insisting that they were a tight tribe, even though they named Moriah. They insisted and pretended. And as I was watching the episode, I initially felt Moriah also took that position, went along with it to defend herself, because if it came out that she was alone, she could become a target like Venus. And as Rob said on the postgame podcast, she did a lot of what we've seen succeed in the previous new era mergeatory situations. And, you know, she even told Dalton Ross, when you're on the bottom, you can kind of go either way, right? When you say, to quote a friend, take me or leave me, it will either go, great, we have a number, or it'll go, great, now we know who to kick off and not piss off 4 people.
Right.
And that's a really delicate line to play. I wanted to go in with you don't want to kick me off. You don't want to piss off these people that you actually want to work with because you don't know me. And then she further explained to Mike Bloom, and this is what I was getting at, that Yanu wasn't looking to pick up someone like her, but rather to choose a side. She said, so at least for the first vote, it was more about convincing Yanu which way to pull. And then she added to Gordon Holmes that Siga wasn't going to be able to out-hot mess Nami. So they wanted to convince Yanu to side with them based on the idea of going to Final 8 as a group. So all of that explains why she went along with this idea of Siga being a tight group. Like I said, it was a bidding war to get Yanu onto their side, and they just misread the Yanu mindset.
But once she had become aware that her name was the one that was dropped, because she was very adamant in all of her exit press that like, oh, they came back with my name. And so I knew I was in trouble.
Yeah.
I think at that point, you need to change your strategy, because now you're like, you have been tossed out to the wolves and now you are one of the options. I don't think you wait. That's when you say, okay, time for me to cut bait. And now I need to change the narrative. I need to stop them from speaking my name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I may have a little experience about having your name thrown out the mergeatory. Little bit of experience.
Just a little bit.
Little bit of experience, So, like, you get back, hopefully you have a trusty ally that says, well, you may not be persona non grata on the other side. And you're taking your information back, and you're like, okay, I'm not persona non grata. And I feel like I actually think the winning move is what Moriah did, and you have to build those relationships. That's the thing. If you have the relationships, you have to try to build those relationships. I think when you go on the offensive, it is tough because people have a plan, and once you thwart their plan, they're like, whoa, they see you have power. Like when you're the target and you switch it, right? You kind of want other people to switch it, as opposed to, oh, we actively see you moving and shaking.
But she still tried to switch it, but she tried to switch it way too late.
Well, and that's exactly it. I think that she should have tried to switch it by doing what you said, James, showing she doesn't have power. And that was my question while watching the episode, especially when we get to Tribal Council, was, okay, she knows she's a likely target. Why didn't she bring that up, that she was on the out sooner than Tribal Council to push back on that? And she did give answers. The interviewers were good at asking that. And, so she said that 7 people made the initial decision sitting at the merge feast. And she specifically added in talking to Gordon Holmes something that I think is an important point, and I hadn't really thought about it, which is those 7 people left the meal with a decision. And they're not getting back together again. It's hard to get 7 people back. So while Q was trying to get them to, switch it to Venus shortly before Tribal Council, and in the moment when I was watching, I was thinking he would succeed due to his sheer persistence, because he has before. The problem was getting all of them on board when a decision had already been reached. And I think that was where her problem was in, like you said, James, if she shows that she can get people together on board, well, she becomes more of a threat. But if she shows everyone that she was really on the outs, start dropping that information, then maybe it makes its way through the paths and people talk about it. And she told Gordon that that was the reason that she didn't put it out, was because she didn't think she could get the 7 on board. But she told Dalton Ross that she was dropping some clues to Venus while talking to her. But
why are you talking to Venus?
That's the last person you should be dropping clues to.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about when you hit mergeatory, it's really sowing those relationships outside of your tribe that first day, because it's going to be hectic,
Yeah.
And how much time can you get talking to people away from other people? And that night before, where you're building a relationship with Q, you're figuring out between Q, Tiffany, and Kenzie, if I need them, who can I go to with information? And that's why you have to try to build those bonds. Hate to take it back to my season, but I'm in Mercer. I'm like, Cody, let's go talk. Why? Because me and Cody talked all night the night before. So I'm like, all right, bet Cody's on this side. I got Cody. This vote, I got Carla Cat. So you're like, okay, I know votes are coming my way, but I'm already have relationships with where there may be opposition, where who's most likely to want me out. Forget my tribe. My tribe is going to want to need me, right? Even if I need to figure out who from the other tribe I can get to be there. Oh, I got her in my back pocket, or I can move forward with her. And that's the thing with a person like Q, where maybe you don't tell Q the truth, but you want Q to feel like you're someone, whatever he needs to hear, you have to figure out what you have to say, how you need to communicate for this person. And sometimes that's tough. And sometimes people all in water. It's not going to happen. But that's the way where you have to really work hard, and there's so little. I think it's so little time. You can really try. Like she could have literally went to like two people for Nami, talked to Tip McKenzie, and literally had 1 minute with Q before the sun went down, and you're at a tribal the next day.
Right.
Yeah,
That's just how quick it is, and it's hard if you haven't been playing to pick up on that pace. So that part I get. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what Moriah was saying in terms of that group of 7 not getting back together again, but getting that information into circulation was literally the only chance she had at that point.
Yeah.
She put everything out there at Tribal Council, but Q was like, this is the first I've heard about it, and he even said, the time to tell me would have been when I was talking to you. About that. And at the end of Tribal Council, Moriah said she wanted to say it loud and clear for all of them to hear. And that's great, but she should have said it loud and clear much earlier, because we have discussed many times on this podcast that the votes are decided and written in stone before people ever get to Tribal Council in by far most cases, meaning that surprise revelations at Tribal Council are unlikely to succeed. Right. And she
you
even
talk
knew
about
that.
People who already made a decision. She's like, oh, the 7 people already made a decision. Well, then you're bringing them to Tribal Council where they've doubled down and like, this is our decision.
And everyone else has. And she knew, she knew the other players had made their decision because they told her that her shot in the dark was her only chance.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Let's get back
Who's
to
saying
this.
these things to her?
Let's
1 in 6.
Oh, okay. Like, so you say 1 in 6 because she may not be the choice you want to go home. And if you're on the safe side, you're like, okay, if she's safe, then we can vote out Venus or somebody like that, possibly. Whatever. So I get that. But I don't maybe that's why I was a bad person, but I'm not telling people who is going home. Like, I don't care. No,
I lied multiple times about that. Yes.
What's I don't get it. I don't want the shot in dark to be played. I don't want any of this stuff to happen. I want the person that's going home to think the plan is somebody else, and they vote for that person, and that person catches votes.
Right. And the other part that I don't understand in all of this planning that they did and voting out Mo and telling her that she was going home and telling her to play the shot in the dark, nobody said, oh, by the way, we should have a backup vote. Charlie was the only one who did, because he was like, oh, well, just in case, I want to make sure but they didn't say, well, we all know she's playing her shot in the dark. Who else are we voting for as a backup? Nobody had that discussion. What are we doing? I don't know what's happening anymore.
Charlie's playing a phenomenal game. He's making correct reads. I'm super impressed with Charlie's game. And that, and I missed the Charlie vote on Venus, but I was happy. I said no hinky vote, but clearly there was. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
But that's how you play the game. You
need that. Yeah.
It should be 2 votes on Venus. It should be a vote on Venus and a vote on when is the dog pile? It's a mistake I made. If you know there's going to be a dog pile vote, you don't ever know. But if you know it's not going to be influential, it's if you can't trust the people you're playing with, you're not going to win. So are you playing to win, or are you playing to get to 5th place and get, Survivor fans? It depends on how you want to play the game. And, if your goal is to win, if you know there's 10 votes going on somebody, then, and it's inconsequential to you, they will vote on Maria. Should Cass call votes? Noelle call votes? Everybody call votes. Our mergeatory.
Right.
Yeah, well, at least, Charlie was one up on last season where they kept piling on everybody and nobody ever threw, an additional, but.
That was Reba, great gameplay by Reba.
Yes, it was.
I love watching that gameplay. And we're still on Route 1, and let me be quiet.
No, but I mean, I think there's some of that here that nobody, people were worried they didn't want to appear disloyal. I mean, even, for as much as Venus complained, and as much as she has also said on Twitter, she still voted Moriah. She didn't cast a vote on Charlie.
Yeah.
So she did the same thing that she was complaining about everyone else doing. She went along with the pack.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But, to
Yes, she
circle it
did.
back to finish out this rule, just I know that Moriah felt she faced an uphill battle by releasing that information sooner. And maybe that uphill was actually a cliff face, but it was still her only hope. And she needed to try to do that. And, I who knows if it would have changed anything.
I mean, I thought she was
Right.
going to win after, being out on the outs. I feel like this is a spot where people like Moriah, Venus, they can make it through mergeatory, not having agency. They don't get the blame for any of the votes, and they typically can possibly make a move later in the game, a la Erica, a la Marianne, a la Gabler. Like, this is where, like, if you don't have agency and you get through, and then the bigger alliance says, we're going to cannibalize each other because we can't be somebody at the end. Like, you make it to the end and you win. Like, I thought she had a strong chance. So,
Like, Venus is just going to sit there and be like,
yeah, I don't know about that. We'll talk about that. But all right, we could go to the second rule, which says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. Moriah told Rob that while she was worried she would overthink things coming into the game, with Siga getting second place almost every time, she didn't have an opportunity to overplay things. And she certainly couldn't overplay in her brief mergeatory time. There was, of course, the impression that she would play too hard. We'll get to that in Rule 6. So, I don't know. Can either of you think of anything that she did in terms of, scheming and plotting too much?
No, I mean, I think she explained why she didn't, because she didn't think she had to, even though she did have to.
Yeah.
So she was a little bit failing in this. Even though it's bad to overplay, she needed to do more in leading up to.
Yeah, one thing I think I didn't do a lot of is I understood where the cracks were. I didn't understand necessarily where the bonds were. And I also may not have thrown out as much stuff to create cracks or to create. So, like, you understand sometimes where the bonds are. So, some things you can do while you're playing the game is throw out stuff and not have to worry too much about it coming back to you. Like a little embellishment of a lie here or there with somebody, it necessarily isn't a bad thing. I'm a bit prone to the truth, but I feel like that's something I could have did better to sow. Like, when you have information, like, ooh, like, like, hey, Cody, you think Jesse would vote you out? Like, you may have been floating, X, Y, Z. Like, oh, like, Owen, like, would you take out, Sammy? Sammy is definitely throwing your name out there. It's like things you can say that, aren't playing hard, and they come back to you, you can deny that you can do more of that I didn't do when I played. I wish I did. So that's the one thing I say about you can play harder, but it's kind of you want to be very strategic and kind of do it in the shadows.
Yeah.
And do it subtly.
Yeah. All right. Well, the third rule tells players to be more flexible. James, how do you think Moriah did here?
I don't follow her where I don't feel like she had as much of opportunity to be flexible where, it's not that much time. So I'm literally going to give, between tribal council and her getting voted out was probably 48 hours, and that includes a merge and a challenge. So, like, as flexible as you can be, I feel like she probably was. The only thing she could have did was probably maybe release that information strategically a little better, but outside of that, I feel like from an odds standpoint, looking at how to do error rules, you don't want to be the person that's perceived as being able to flip a vote or make a vote in front of everybody when you're the target.
Yeah.
And I'm biased, but that's not what you want to be perceived as being able to do at these points. So it's like, are you playing a game to win $1 million? And you want to go far too, but like, what is a winning actual strategy? And what's been proven to be winning strategy is to kind of lay low and assert dominance once cracks begin to form.
Yeah. Yeah, I would go back a little bit to before this actual episode, because she talked in interviews about how she spoke to Charlie about what would happen after the Siga vote, no matter the outcome, because she had a feeling something might be up. And to me, that showed she was willing to adapt if the landscape changed under her. But before that, much like after that, she didn't really have much opportunity to be flexible. She thought she was in an alliance of 4 people out of the 6 on her tribe. And she tried to talk to the other 2, which is good, but hadn't gotten anywhere from what we heard. So to me, the only other place I think, she could have been more flexible was in making the sub-alliance within the four, which we talked about already.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the fourth rule tells players not to let their emotions control them. Jessica, we've discussed some of the moves she made or didn't make. Do you think any of them were impacted by her emotions?
I don't think so. I think that she was trying to play this game from a standpoint that was going to benefit her, knowing that she had people on her side. But I don't think that it was based upon anything other than necessarily gameplay. Like, I didn't see her making decisions that were emotionally based. I saw her trying to make decisions that she thought were going to be beneficial game wise. And a lot of what she said in her exit press, I think, was interesting because she was clearly playing the numbers. You know, if you know that you have 7 with this, and if you go and so she was trying to strategize in that way. And I do think that she could have pulled more of a Venus, right? Knowing that her name had been dropped and knowing that she was someone that they were considering, she could have been like, well, that was going to be hellfire and brimstone. And I'm going to tell everybody what happened back at Siga. And I'm going to let everyone know what's going on. And then that would have come from more of an emotional place as opposed to still trying to keep her wits about her. Because honestly, I was surprised. I'm like, how does she still have everybody's back? How is she still defending Siga when she knows that they've like cut her loose and said, ah, you can vote out Mo if you want. And she knows that her name is on the chopping block. And she's still saying, but you know, it was a unanimous vote. Yeah, we were all together. Hoorah. I mean, like, that was impressive. So I don't think she had any issues with her emotions at all.
I just thought about this. Same thing happened at 43. It's like Ellie was cool. Like Gabler comes, everybody's like, Gabler's like, yo, Ellie. And Ellie, because you're so, with those tribal bonds, you're so wanting to make them work because there's so much stuff there. But at that point, you kind of have to kind of say, okay, where's the power at that's making this decision? And as comfortable as I am, you know, with the people that I'm with, if they're comfortable enough that my name comes up at all, then I have to figure something out, you know.
Yeah.
And that's a tough thing to kind of do, but the time that you have, even from an information standpoint, and then finding people and then being able to communicate the information to the right person in a 3 hours time span.
Yeah.
When it's very tough, you know. So
yeah. All right. Well, the fifth rule reminds players they need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. Now, James, you tweeted that a big part of the game of Survivor isn't just having the right read, it is building the relationships to make what you want happen. I'm pretty sure you were mostly talking about Venus at the time, but how do you think it applies here for Moriah, especially since everybody on Siga seemed, or at least pretended, to get along and did everything together as a group?
I think this is the rule that I think is the most interesting in my head, only because I feel like we have so much meta thought process out there where I think sometimes taking yourself out of the meta and what is supposed to happen isn't necessarily a bad thing for the game or how to play the game, especially in the new era. It's more of a zag than a zig. I took a player like Cody, who didn't play a traditional game, wasn't a big survivor player. Who just said he didn't win, but he had a chance to win. Like but he played his game. Where he was like, all right, played things and did and like built those relationships. And Cody was a relationship builder. Where people weren't really like, oh, he's just here for a good time. Where I really feel like that's the thing where you have to figure out, how to put in time with people. One thing that comes back to fire. You have fire. You have a communal place where people have to gather. So if people want to stay warm, they're going to be around the fire. What happens around the fire? Communication, like camaraderie, like so. You have to figure out how to build those bonds with strangers, which is the toughest thing. Where you may be the youngest, you may be the oldest, you may be from a city, and everybody else is from the countryside. Like you have to figure out how to build those bonds. And that's the hardest part. And the hardest part for them to show in the game is like how does Gabler build bonds with Jesse? Right. How does Gabler and Cody connect? Where are James and Cassidy cool? those things are the things where being able to figure those things out, which it's hard to show. But you have to understand that the relationships are the crux. And those relationships build you numbers. And those relationships are very fluid, where you may feel like you're at the bottom at one point and it's just that one vote. And I feel like that's the hard part about the game is you don't have time at merge. At merge, you don't have time. You get the merge. Just you've been out there. After you get the merge, when the sun goes down at a certain time, the sun goes back up, and then you're at a challenge, and then you're at tribal, and it's a shorter tribal because half the tribe isn't there after the challenge, right? You have a shorter time to really get out there and do your thing. And if you haven't been to tribals, you don't understand like being able to make a vote. Like if you probably went back and looked at Survivor, like who made a vote, who's like was on the right side of a vote, and then who's on the off the vote. Not that many people make votes in Survivor. Like, not many people actually are the people generating the votes for Survivor. A lot of people are, added on, but the generators of the votes, you have to kind of figure out who they are, get under them, or get them out, depending on your position. And I feel like that's the tough part from a relationship standpoint. We're understanding where am I investing my time? I have an hour left on this day. Who am I going to spend this hour with? Because you can spend an hour with Charlie or Maria, or you spend an hour with somebody that you were on the challenge with, and that means nothing the next day because it's a split chart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
All
I
right.
think she
Go ahead.
And just to add to, I think there might have been a bit of a struggle for her socially just because she didn't seem to have a true understanding of what connection she had with who. For her to say, I thought I was close with this one, but Maria thought I was close with that one. And like, there seemed to be such a jumble there that there shouldn't be a question who your number 2 is. You should be like, this is my number 2. That's my number 3. I've got this group over here. Like, there should be an idea of what your structure is based upon the social game that you're playing, and to not know where you fall within that and not to understand who's actually close with who. I think that this is where Moriah probably didn't do a great job of trying to really lock herself in, which is then why no one had her back and no one was like coming to her defense when they needed to put someone's name on the line.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. No one went to the mattresses for her, as they say in the Godfather days. You had to go to the mattresses. You want somebody playing the game that's going to go to the mattress for you. And that doesn't happen as much, in the new era where someone's like, I need you for my game. For me to win this game, I need you here for one more vote.
Right.
And you have to have multiple people that feel that way. And when they don't feel that way, whether they feel like they can take you to the end or they feel like you're going to be somebody, like when you don't have that, that's when you go home. And that's when I went home. And that's when typically everybody else goes home, where you don't have somebody that's going to go to the mattress and say, I need you for my game to move further. And I'm willing to put my game on the line because I know I can't win without you. So
Yeah, I think that Moriah did well socially.
Agreed.
But again, there's the difference between the social and the social game. And I think she got along well with everyone, and talked about how much she liked Ben and everything else, but wasn't able to turn it into the game aspect of things.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now we get to the much awaited 6th rule, which warns against being too much of a threat. Now, I know we're going to have some thoughts here because everyone knows that anyone who likes Aubry must be a huge threat. It's the rule.
It is. She needs to sell those t-shirts.
Yes. And by the way, I almost forgot. I posted this on Twitter, but did you know that I actually had a picture taken with Moriah before she was ever on the show? It's right here.
That was funny. I was really just waiting. I didn't know it was happening, but I'm rolling. That's hilarious.
That's amazing.
So anyone
She looks
who
so great. Look at her.
yeah. So anyone who is only listening, well, you'll have to either look at my Twitter or look at the video to see that it's, not exactly a picture of Moriah. But more seriously, Moriah said that after her team lost the challenge, she said on the show, she couldn't have people saying she's a strategist and that she was going to get them out. But that's exactly what happened. While Q, of course, sparked a lot of this after she dared say she liked Aubry, that wasn't the only thing going on. Tim said at the Merge Feast that the person who knows the game the best was Moriah. Tevin added that he heard through the grapevine that she's savvy. Tiffany said she's a crazy Survivor fan. Tevin asked who's more manipulative, Moriah or Venus. Tiffany was more worried about someone smart who could outmaneuver them. So somehow this got implanted into the brains of the 7 safe players. And while they were undoubtedly overstating it, I do want to point out that in her pregame interviews, Moriah said she's a super fan. She began watching in Karamoan, went back to watch the earlier seasons, and of course, everything since then. She called herself a nerd, but one who is a very social person. And she was trying to downplay the first part so she didn't become a target for being seen as both smart and social. So, she didn't plan to talk about the fact that she read a bunch of strategy books to prepare. After the game, she told Dalton Ross that she was upset at being called a strategist and wondered, what did I do other than look like me? And that was it. It really was that I had invoked someone everyone was already thinking about. I was honest. I look like me. I talk like me. I walk like me. But here's the thing. I mean, I understand what she's saying, but based on her own description of herself, they weren't wrong.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I do think that this is a very interesting point as far as the new era of Survivor and what can be seen as a threat. It's no longer your physical prowess. It's no longer how well you can actually perform in a challenge. There is this new version of a Survivor player, and it's the one who looks like they can do a puzzle really well, even though Hunter we know is a puzzle person. He's a combo. But there is that the David Wrights of the Survivor world who you look at and you think, wow, why is this person playing Survivor? Because they're not an outdoorsy person. They're not someone who wants to be in the elements. They're not someone who is really having a good time out here in the rain. This person must just be really, really smart, and they must be a strategist, and there must be something going on that they have. And this is it's a new threat in Survivor, is that person who looks like someone who is not your typical outdoorsy Survivor person. They must be someone who is a super fan, who loves the game, who wants to strategize. So I feel like if you fall into that, and we seem to have so many more of that version of players as the new era progresses.
Yeah, and I want to say, I know, James, you have something. I just want to say, you say it's a new thing, but, Kelly Wentworth, she got voted out early from San Juan del Sur because people said she's a strategist. She knows the game. Get rid of her.
And that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, nothing is wrong with getting rid of, everybody that goes home, on the island, you invent a reason to justify every vote off that you do. I do think that team construction and in this construction of the team, where you have 7 people, typically you want to, when you're in a position of power, right? You want to cast the people that need to go out as most opposite of you, right? Because you're trying to create the stereotype of who are the good people and who are the people we need to get rid of, right? So when you're in a position of power, right? If I am a person that's considered lions and hyenas, Tony, my guy, I can't say everything because I want to play again, so I'm gonna be quiet on some things. But the lions and hyenas, and you have to watch the votes, even versus odd, about how and when to make moves from a. You have your threats to win the game. Like, who actually has the tools? Who's charismatic? Who's athletic? Who do people like? Right. Then you have, but then the threat level shifts to who do people want to sit next to more than me?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, if you are a person that is perceived as a bigger threat or an alpha person, right? No matter whether you are or you're not, right? You know, Charlie is part of the guys alliance, whatever. Who cares, right? You're part of that, right? Now you have to figure out. Wait, okay, like how do I need to paint? If I'm considered part of the big dogs, and they are targeting the strong, quote unquote, stronger players, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, hold up, I need to change the narrative of what strong is.
Yeah.
Strong isn't me over here. Strong is Moriah. She knows the
Mm-hmm.
game. She's a trickster. So you're just pushing that narrative because that is the narrative that fits most what you said. You know what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
Moriah just happened to be a part of. You don't want these guys to be considered like their threats, like
Right.
so they're not gonna say, you know, Tim is a
People
threat.
like us.
Yeah, so you should be worried about us, you know. We're
Yeah.
gonna say, ooh, on that side, you have Orion the strategist. Venus is a wild card, you know. And so you have your strategy narrative about who the threat is at the moment, and you're like, you know, and from Q's perspective, Q has this 6 or 7. So at the
Right.
end of the day, he's like, you know, I got maybe have Kinsey a side pocket with a 7. I may be able to build someone else from Siga. They got their 6. Man, like everybody's connected. So now you just try to figure out, okay, what's threatening to us as the collective hierarchy. And she just fell into that. And that's the tough part about, and then Venus, what Venus did is she bumped against the hierarchy. He's like,
Yeah.
I want to go against the hierarchy. We'll probably get there. And it's like at the beginning of merge, I feel like so many people want to have agency and want to control votes. I think Mariah's in a good stage where she was fine letting things flow. And I think she just had to make sure that people saw how much of an asset she could have been in the game as opposed to a threat. But I do think the people that were on the other side were like, Mariah is somebody that people want to sit next to over me. Right. And that was more threatening to them than her being able to strategize. It's like people are going to want to sit next to her versus me if I'm Q, if I'm Tim,
Yeah.
if I'm Ben, if I'm anybody on the other side, if I'm Tiff. Like, you was next to me or Mariah from a observation standpoint, right? And that's where I think her threat level raised from a standpoint of they're going to keep her over me, which I think if you're perceived in the hierarchy of higher, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, I just want to add, as far as who do you want to sit next to? They all want to sit next to Venus at this point too.
Yeah,
So
well,
they're like,
yes,
we
yes.
got to keep Venus
Well,
around because
Yeah. Now, there's a couple things. One, you know, when you mentioned it has to be the opposite, it reminds me of all the times that we've seen tribes where like the second weakest person on the tribe will be like, we got to vote out the weakest. And we're sitting here going, no, don't say that because you're next in line if you lose again. Don't say that, you know? And so, yes, it has to be the opposite, just like you said, James. And the other thing is, this is one area where Venus did apparently, you know, come through and recognize what was going on because, you know, according to what she tweeted, she went to a couple of the other players and said, if they're voting out gamers, you're next. You're going to be on the list. Venus's problem in that situation was there was nothing those people could do about it. You know, you know, so it didn't matter. But, you know, but she at least did recognize this, you know, the same thing that you're talking about. Yeah. Once they start down a path, you know, it's like once you start voting out the most muscular players, oh, well, then let's do the next and the next and the next.
Right.
In this case, it's just a little bit different. Now, in terms of a gamer type being a threat, until recently, my advice within this rule was if you have studied the game, never let on to how much you know. Now, a few seasons ago, I watered this down in the language of the rules because the players being cast featured so many who knew the game and have watched many or all of the seasons, so it seemed not to be as big a deal. I mean, James, your tribe alone had at least half of your tribe were Why Blank Lost regular listeners and have now appeared on the show with you, you know, being here, and possibly more than half. And there were others on your season too. So yeah, there are a lot of people who are this, you know, thinking this way. But even so, I had a feeling it could still come up. And the rule does continue to advise players to keep that information close to the vest until you can figure out where everybody stands. We don't really know how much information people on Siga knew about Moriah's history with the show, but based on what we talked about a little while ago, it seems like they knew enough. And of course, Q was looking for reasons to put a target on someone, so he was willing to play up anything. Now, James, you tweeted that being a super fan in the new era makes you a threat. And also you said that the threat stuff is so much nonsense. So
it's very much nonsense. I mean, it's only nonsense from the concept of someone has to win the game, right? If there was a process where someone isn't like there's a chance that there's not going to be a winner, it's like then okay. But we're voting people out. Everybody is a threat. The question is like no, like here's the deal. Like, all right, okay, my season. When did y'all think Gabriel was going to win? Let me know.
Never.
like
I'm still questioning that decision, James.
I mean, so like what I'm saying is like I feel like maybe I'm jaded from my season, right?
Yeah.
Where you have to gauge threat levels based on what that threat level is to you. Whether can they vote you out? Can they vote you out, right? Do they have the juice? Right? Do they have juice, right? So if they have juice, it's different, right? Those players, if you have juice, that's different, right? You play. And tell me if I'm wrong. People know the hierarchy out there. Like there's a hierarchy, it happens, there's a perceived hierarchy. That perceived hierarchy, right or wrong, like that's just what it is. You can change. It's just you have to kind of understand that. It's like who do people want to keep over you, right? Where they value them as they want to see them go further because they can't make a move and shake as much as you, and you're in a comfortable situation. You have to, but everybody is a threat to win the game. So it's like when it's like, oh, you can't manage your threat level when perception is just made up, right? You only can try to be an asset to as many people as possible in a way that makes them feel comfortable. Meaning, right, you have to make people feel comfortable with whatever you bring to the table. Meaning, Cody felt comfortable that Jesse knew the game because he was not a gamer, right?
Right.
So Jesse being a gamer and understanding the game was an asset, right? So, but to somebody else that may not have been. So it's very individual and it's very relationship based and understanding what other people may view as threatening. For me, I'm a person that people gravitate to. I had a big personality. I didn't realize I'm thinking everybody needs to survive. They got big personality. Not the case. That aspect of my personality was more threatening than anything else that was going on. And being able to manage that part would have lowered my threat level, right?
Yeah.
And that's where it's understanding the traits that make people threats at whatever time in the game it is. And that's why everybody's a threat because there's no actual threat rubric. It's so much about the time and effort in the game. Like if they knew Gabler was a threat, they would have voted Gabler out, but everybody wanted to sit next to Gabler at the end. Even the people that sat next to Gabler was next to Gabler at the end.
Right, right.
So it's like, that's where we're at with it. So that's just my threat diatribe,
Yeah, I would. The reason I would disagree is less what you're talking about and more the people who are like voted out first or second in the whole game and go into their final words and say they voted me out because I was a threat. And Jessica and I are like, no, they didn't. That's not why they voted you out.
That's not what happened. I'm sorry,
and
no.
And Banu was not voted out because he was a threat. He could have stayed the whole game. He would not have won. I'm sorry. Venus. I'm gonna say it right now. Venus will not win. No chance. Okay. And so to my mind, now, is she a threat to take someone else's seat at the final three? Yes. Is she a threat to win? No. But there can be these weird situations. And your season, I hate to call it a weird situation, but your season was one where all the people that everyone considered to be threats got knocked out. And you were left with three people, each of whom wanted to sit with the other two because they all viewed each other as non-threats. And like you said, the issue is someone has to win the game. So someone has to get those votes. And however the jury makes that decision, then they make that decision. And so, yeah, I would not, and certainly did not peg Gabler as being a threat to win. But then you look at how it happened and you go, oh, it's because of the perceptions and who he was up against,
Right.
and we certainly discussed that, plenty. And so, but, yes, everybody, not everybody, most people have some situation where they can win. But like Jeff said at the beginning of the season, there is at least one person, probably several, who simply cannot.
Yeah.
Banu could not. No chance. Venus, at this point, if you had asked me 2 episodes ago, I would have had a different answer. At this point, I am saying, no, Venus cannot win. And so everybody else, I think probably can. I mean,
Well,
I go, Jessica. I'm sorry.
Well, I do think that there is a lot to be said, and this is something that we've mentioned before, that one person can be a threat to one other person's game. And that person doesn't have to be a threat across the board.
right.
But that's when you really have to start looking at how is this person going to impact my game, that ripple effect. And so if someone is dropping your name, well, guess what? That person is now a threat to you because they're out there dropping your name. Like Charlie talked about that. Venus was the only one out there saying my name. So I needed to vote for Venus because that's a threat to Charlie. And so the threat level is something that you have to look at. Like, do I think Venus is a threat to win? No. But do I think Venus is a threat to take that third seat away from someone? Yes. Do I think Venus is a threat when it comes to just wreaking havoc and chaos and throwing all kinds of wrenches in the works? Yes. And so those are the decisions that you have to make when you're looking at who do I want to vote out as opposed to who do I want to stay. And in this particular circumstance, I thought it was very interesting that they looked at it and said, Venus is just creating chaos. Who cares?
Right.
Mo, on the other hand, she's someone who is going to strategize and we need to worry about long term. And so I feel like that's, to me, I don't remember there really being a moment in Survivor where people were like, whoever's creating chaos, that's fine. We're not worried about that person because they aren't going to be making votes happen, as you talked about. Like, can you make a vote happen? Venus is not going to make a vote happen. So they're willing to keep her. And so that's where that component of determining what type of threat you are and what type of effect will it have on the game long term becomes so significant when you are looking at your game and where you're positioned and what are these other people doing that could potentially affect your game.
Yeah, I mean, and every season is different. Like, and that's the thing
Yes.
where it's kind of like we're in every single has a different theme, different people, and I feel like you have to adapt. Like, you have tenants that are the same, right? You have the same tenants you want to adapt when you're playing, and you want to take your rules. I have rules. You like things you want to do. Like my rule, I had a rule like if you don't find the idol, someone has it, right?
Mhm.
I forgot about that rule, like completely. But I forgot about that rule. Don't put somebody in the corner. Kind of put somebody in the corner, like certain things you kind of forget, but it's about having that discipline. But from a don't be too much of a threat it's something that you really don't have as much control over as much as you do forming what a threat is for the season
right.
or at that time with the group mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And because like people want to perceive whatever you bring to the table. Like there may be a season where Mo plays where there's like 3 way bigger super fans than her, right? So her being a super fan, they're like, oh, these people are super strategic. She's just having a good time. And it's about the people that so it very much has changed. So it's very much about the season you're on and being able to try to create that narrative. And like it's the one thing I remember hearing Kim Spratlin say that I tried to do that was unsuccessful because I didn't win is understanding the narrative at Tribal Council when everybody's talking, when you're like, and I even said it when I was out there, I'm like, yo, this is the narrative that we're going for when we go to Tribal. When Jeff asks these questions, here's what we're going to say. Here's our thought process. We're going to say it's going to be this person. We're going to act like it's here, but we're voting this person out. Like that's what we're giving. You know, what's going to be frustrating to production, who knows? Maybe, who knows? I mean, But that's how you had to do it, Jess.
Right.
You have to kind of do that to get these votes off. So
right,
I mean,
right.
It's tough. It's very tough, and I feel bad for Mo. But I feel like she didn't do anything super duper wrong. But I also feel like you have to you have to rely on relationships you have to find a person out there when you're playing.
Yeah.
And you have to have one person, and that main person may screw you at the end, but you have to find that one person out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting what you're talking about. You know, the seasons can be different. Like, I know you haven't watched Australian Survivor, but on Australian Survivor, because the challenges in the early goings are so much more physical, the typical way that a season goes, without spoiling anything, is big burly men get together and rule the roost for a while until those types of challenges don't matter anymore, and then they all get picked off. But in a recent season, I won't say which one, a recent season, the smarter, I hate to say smarter because it makes it sound like the burly people are not smart, but the non-burly people got together and were like, no, we see the muscly people getting together already. We're not going to have that. We're going to put a stop to that. We're going to turn on them early. And because one tribe did it right away, the other tribe saw it and said, oh, we can vote out our strong people too. And so it completely changed the way Australian Survivor is usually played. Yeah. And so, you know, and that goes back also, Jessica, to what you were saying about Venus, because she massively overplayed. But the irony is that her massive overplaying saved her for now.
Yes.
Because of what you said, she was less of a threat than Moriah because they figured out we can get her whenever. Whereas Mariah's danger level would just grow.
Yeah, and I do think that the fact that Moriah was willing to make the play that she made at Tribal Council probably didn't do her any help in that regard either, because Q was like, why'd you wait till now to do this? Now, it's not a good game move to think that you're going to be able to change the vote at a Tribal Council like that. But the fact that she was willing to just be like, all right, let me tell you everything that's going on right now, and let me just put it all on the table for you. I think if anything, they looked at her and went, oh gosh, now we really need to worry about her. Like, yes, now we really need to get her out of here, because she is willing to lop everyone's heads off at Tribal Council right now. So we need to take care. So it's almost like she solidified it for them at that moment, that this is the best vote, because she's being very strategic in her timing. She made this decision. She's not being chaotic. She's like, I am telling you truthfully and honestly, right now, I'm telling you everything as clear as I can. That's someone you don't want to bring back to camp with you, because that's someone who has drawn a very deep line in the sand. And so I think at that moment they were all like, okay, we definitely have to vote out Mo.
Someone said this, and I said I wasn't going to say this, but we're having this conversation. In the new era, I feel like it's better to mask your votes on emotion than logic, if you can. Where you want to make your vote seem emotional, because that is better than you making a logically good decision.
So say someone, oh, I'm voting for them because they pissed me off, rather than saying I'm voting for them because, I know strategically it's best for me.
Yeah,
exactly. And what Mo did at Tribal was kind of, I think, cement whoa, this was whether you like it or not, it was a strategic move to hold and wait, right? So if you're saying, if the argument against you is that I am a strategic person, I'm a strategic thinker, the more you're marching a land of slaughter, right? It's like, all right, cool. When you go to Tribal with a deliberate, I held this information back, I let this information out, right? Without having an ally there or somebody that's you have to put people, you have to have that person, it could be Kinsey, who knows who, you have to have that person that's on your other side when you drop this information, that the rules of switching the vote at Tribal has to be already, the person that tells you to play your shot in the dark. Hey, I'm playing my shot in the dark, but I'm about to just tell this, is that going to change it? And she cemented that she's a strategic player, because it takes a lot of guile to keep your calm, not throw the beans at Kent and then say, we had Tribal.
Yeah. By the way, Jeff,
You're not
Let me
tight.
tell you what's really going down.
Yeah.
You know, so and what Venus proved was Venus was raising hell for Charlie, but didn't get any traction. So everybody said, "Whoa, like what can she do?" And then B,
Right.
is she a target for next week for us if we need to find a? When Tim said we could do Mo this week or Venus next week, or
Right.
then like can she be a possible target for the for next week? Because that's the goal in your head, and I'm thinking you're playing when you vote somebody out. You want to lay the groundwork for who was the next one or two, specifically two going into this split, or knowing a split's happening. You want to keep as many targets out there as possible, which does even encourage more passive play at this vote because you don't want to actually pick sides this early.
Yeah. So, all right. So, I do want to say before we leave this rule, there is one thing we haven't talked about, because I think the real threat that Moriah posed was that she and Liz look too much alike. So one of them had to go so that the other players wouldn't accidentally talk to the wrong person. Like come
They
up.
should have just switched glasses.
Yeah,
and
they
tried
should
to
have
throw
switched,
everyone
switched
off.
jackets, and Moriah could have grabbed Liz's jacket and gone over and said, "Hi, I'm Liz. What do you think about that Moriah person?"
Wait, was Liz vulnerable?
Yes.
Yes.
Like
they were both. Yes, they were both.
But
they were both.
They didn't even
up
show
for
her.
vote.
She didn't get a confessional. She got like a couple of glimpses, and I swear, okay, that part I was obviously joking about, but I think the reason production really didn't show us much of Liz is they were afraid viewers would get confused.
Oh, probably.
So you're saying now this is the Liz story from here on out. Like what you're saying is like now that Mariah's gone, Liz is going to I would say probably marry and her way to the finish. Like Liz is I thought Moriah, I was going with Tyson. I thought Moriah was in a good place. I think Liz is even in a better place. Like once you establish the hierarchy, she's a quote unquote, we shouldn't be talking about this now, but I just feel I'm freestyling.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I could be jaded. I feel like Liz is in this really spot where she's not responsible for anything. She has a lot of shields in front of her. And who's going to target her? We have Tevin and Hunter. So you have two shields in front of you.
She's like a billionaire, remember? So they might be like,
Gabler was rich too. If you didn't know Gabler was rich, then that was on you. So I said, I'm jaded. I'm just telling you what I am. My personal jaded experience about Survivor.
Yes.
I just think they're all going to go back to camp, and the next morning they're going to see Liv and be like, "Wait, didn't we vote her out? Oh no, never mind." That's the other. That's the other one. That's not Mo. That's Liz.
I'm rooting for tech billionaire Liz. So
yes. I just want her to give me a lesson on how to turn my TikToks into millions. That's what I need.
I just want to know how she's actually all these spam emails I get, and somehow she's making tons of money sending people spam emails.
No, she doesn't send the emails. She teaches other people how to send.
But how to make people read them?
Well, yeah.
What?
Uh-huh.
Oh gosh.
So
it's amazing.
I'll be consulting with Liz after the season is over. All right, we can move on to the 7th rule, which covers idols and advantages in game mechanics. And the picture for this rule on our poster has a certain somebody immediately after her rock draw.
Mm-hmm.
And as we discussed earlier, a rock draw impacted Moriah as well. But that's not something you can do anything directly about. You just, you can't go, in addition to, I think Rob talked about this on one of his podcasts. You got to practice picking rocks, in addition to puzzles, practice picking rocks.
Don't take the first one you touch. Okay. Yeah. That's my suggestion. Don't.
But what you can do is be in the best situation possible for whatever may happen. Yes. And we've already talked about how that didn't work out for her from the Siga vote that had just occurred. So, there's not a whole lot more we could talk about other than her shot in the dark, which was obviously correct to play. It just didn't hit.
Which I think is, again, fascinating. I know I already talked about this, but that it was so well known that she was playing it. And I don't.
What?
I
It's crazy.
I don't understand. And I also don't like the shot in the dark. I don't agree with it. She was talking about how she hadn't gone on a journey, and so that's affected things for her. And again, I am of the mindset that there's too many additives that are taking away from a player's ability to just play the game. And when you have someone like Mo in a confessional saying, there's this, and this person went on a journey, so they have an advantage. This person went on a journey, so they have an advantage. This person, we have these shot, everyone has a shot in the dark, and this person hasn't. And like, she's ticking off all of these things. And it's like, you are definitely negatively affecting people's ability to just play. Like, can we have less? And I know I've been on a soapbox about this before, but I just feel like her actually pointing to the fact that she hadn't been on a journey yet and other people had, and that affected her ability to play the game. And that if there was one thing she could change, it would be trying to like skew the ability to go on that first journey. Cause then maybe she could have built some bridges, across the way. So I just feel like there's something to be said about adding so many things like a rock draw to create a team. Let them play. Just let them do it because they will.
Yeah.
They absolutely will.
That's an interesting concept. Like, even when I went on my journey, I didn't think about my journey as necessarily. I mean, clearly they voted me out, but like I thought about it in a way where I wanted to build bonds, but I didn't think about it from the way she thought about it as a way win, lose, or draw. How can I actually build relationships? To Zelensky, I'm not the way he played it, but
Right.
I wouldn't give up and just die. But that is an interesting concept. Just like you have so little time, right? So if you have a 2-hour conversation with somebody prior to the merge, that's 2 hours of, or an hour and a half, or an hour of understanding a little bit. And if you're able to pull some tribe dynamics from that, that could be very beneficial. If you're able to get some tribe dynamics from this, as opposed to we're making a. So I'm pretty sure, if you're sharing information, you may not know who's on the bottom, but Tim chose Maria. So she didn't. Tim didn't say Mo.
Right.
Right.
Like you didn't say Kinsey. Like so it's kind of just and even I say Ben. All these things say stuff and give people a comfort level or not comfort level possibly with you. So maybe a journey is you got people may look at the journey as a different way of saying, even if I lose my vote, right? At the merge, right? Depending on how you lose your vote, maybe this is a thing where I'm trying to build these bonds. Like, what information am I communicating? Do I need to go on a journey and say, I'm on the outs or I'm feeling good? Like, what is your journey story? And do you need to tell the truth in your journey story? And what is your best way to move forward? Like I should have in my journey, I should have just took that advantage and I'm on the bottom, give me this advantage, XYZ, right? Instead, I'm just like, oh, I'm trying to build bonds that way. Like, F that. I need to be more aggressive. Maybe you need to go on journeys. Maybe you need to, it's just kind of a way to kind of think about it in the sense of, I thought giving up and being like, oh, I'm willing to be, it's a good thing, when I should have been like, no, I know I'm in a good position. I know I'm not going to tribal. I know you are. So I'm in a bad position. I want this. I'm risking it regardless. So I was in a good position. So it was like, it's just those things are the new parts of the game where thinking about that from an agency point of view, like you may want to be second on the boat, maybe not the first journey. Maybe you want to make sure you're on the second journey. Maybe you want to tell the person on the first journey to tell people, yo, if you get a chance to choose somebody, choose this person.
Yeah.
Because I'm cool with it's a whole new level of how you got to think about your relationships and what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And the sharing of information. Yeah.
It's, I think even Jeff said this. Maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe it was Moriah, but because they rarely do swaps now, journeys are the only way you're meeting people from the other tribes other than talking to them on the mats,
Right.
And so you have to use it that way.
About that too. I feel like they got to switch the map positions up for challenges sometimes, only because I think I'm just, if you're in the middle mat, right, every single time, you have the advantage to communicate with both teams subtly or not subtly. And that we saw that on my season. Damn, I gotta stop bringing up my season. But it's just
why
trauma,
you're here.
where it's like we weren't next to Vessi ever. you know. So it's like you're at this thing. So people argue. So it's those little things.
Right.
You're on a mat.
Mhm.
And you're looking over. You see the person's shoes. Oh, you got the same shoes. Oh, you're wearing your buff the same way. Like it's anything,
Mhm.
and you can
Yeah.
involve little things. So that's just my thought process. Like I feel like you have to move the tribes around and do all
Yeah.
that stuff. You know. So
Yeah. It's a
little
good point.
rant, but it's just
I
like
like that. That's a good point.
it's those little things from just what can you build? Like me and Owen had the same Hoka sneakers on, so we're looking at each other like I'm thinking, well, yeah, we may be able to do. You never know, but if you
Right.
don't have the
And
ability,
clearly
to
you
look at
got along perfectly and never argued or anything because of the
the
shoes.
sneaker connection, I thought the
Yeah.
sneaker connection was working, but clearly, but no, but like having the ability to be next to another tribe to say, you know, add a boy or give a look or give a
Mhm.
whatever you can do there is, you know, important.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can move on to Appendix A, which is about the players keeping their end goals in mind when voting. And we talk about voting out the weak, then the strong, then the weak, then the strong. Now, because of the rock draw splitting the group into one team who fit the mold of strong physical threats in general, and one group who didn't, one avenue for discussion here was removed. So the next question is, who might be a stronger player in other ways? And this takes us back to our Rule 6 discussion about who is or isn't a threat.
Mhm.
But it's also bigger than that because this vote helps set up what will potentially happen for the future. There are several, and I don't mean 7, different alliances and groups who think they're in control, and all of them had a common goal, which was make it through, do damage to the other groups, and not start a war too early.
Mm.
And what this means is if they could come to agreement on one person who wouldn't piss anyone off, who they consider important, they were going to do it.
Right.
Now, the groups that we have are the Journey 6, the Nami Corps Alliance.
The Journey 6. I like
Well,
that.
that's what I think Q is calling them that. So I just
like that. That's good.
Don't stop believing in the Journey 6. So you have the Journey 6, the Nami Corps, the Siga Corps, and the Yanu Alliance. Now, these, of course, overlap, making the situation more
Mhm.
complicated because, for example, the Journey 6 don't want to tip their hands about where they stand to their individual tribe alliances. But there were 2 people outside of all the alliances, Moriah and Venus.
Mhm. Yeah.
And Liz, but Liz is, you know,
I mean, I think Liz is part of her core in that, like, they were at least involving her in talking about getting rid of Soda or getting rid of Venus. I mean,
and that's great gameplay, right? Like,
yeah,
because you had a tribe of 5, so you're like, okay, we got our 3, so so we know who our 1 is, but we're gonna make sure this person feels comfortable enough that they're a part of it, and that's the
Right.
game that people. I want
Right.
people, if you're thinking about playing the game and thinking about the game, that's great Survivor. When you say,
Right.
okay, we know we're whittling down this pre-merge phase. We know we don't have any votes left. Let's make sure Liz is with us.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
going into the merge and make sure she knows that we're targeting Venus and Soda. So in her mind, Liz is like, oh, I got 700. They're down target Soda and Venus.
Yeah.
I feel like those are the little things you have to look at from a gameplay that are magnifique
Yeah.
from a Hunter and a Tevin, where it's not like Liz doesn't feel like she's on the outs. So it's not Liz and Mo and Venus getting together and saying, oh, we have 3. Let's talk to Yanu. And then one other person. Like, it's just like those are the little things that keep you further in the game. So I just wanted to highlight that aspect.
Yeah. Now, Hunter noted that he wanted to take out Moriah because Siga was so strong, while Nami, having obvious cracks, made them seem like less of a threat to others. And the Yanu 3 felt the same way, not to mention, of course, that, Moriah scared Q because, Aubry. But this is where we get to some of the things Venus and others were saying on Twitter.
Oh, baby.
Yes. Because, she complained that players, quote, chose the boring, safe vote, period. If you think Moriah was the smart vote and I should have kept my mouth shut, then LMAO. She also tweeted, "Why is it a curse for young women to express logic and reason? I genuinely want you to ask yourselves why it was a smarter vote to pick Moriah over Charlie. Answer, it wasn't. It was just easier for the brochachos to maintain control."
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Sorry.
it's kind of answered her own question, because I understand Venus's perspective, but the goal of the game of Survivor is not making exciting moves. Safe votes.
No, it's not.
Yes.
Thank you.
Safe votes right now are often the right moves for the majority, and that was the case here. She wanted Charlie out, but she didn't understand where Charlie stood in alliances. There was no way Siga players would go along with that. Now, you could say, well, Nami and Yanu together could have voted Charlie, but again, it would have started a war. It would have threatened the Journey 6 alliance that she doesn't know about. And so, yeah, she's not wrong about it being easier for the brochachos to maintain control, but that's the thing. They're currently in control.
Right.
She wasn't going to change that. It's like, you're not going to convince the people in control to give up control. Plus, it could be risky with the split tribal council coming, because you never know who you'll end up with there. Why make enemies right before it? And I said all those things, and then I scrolled on my Twitter timeline, and I'm like, oh, hell, James tweeted the exact same thing 10 minutes before I did.
Great minds think alike.
It's one of those things where I feel like it's tough when you're in the game, right? So I never was on the bottom. I mean, I voted out, but like from just a gameplay standpoint, like talking to other people, like they actually were on the bottom. I don't understand how that feels like, right, on the island. Like I had a really fun, good like experience, right? But on the bottom, it definitely probably feels like, and she knew she was on the bottom from day one, right? And I don't understand that feeling of being on the bottom for so long.
Yeah, it has to suck. I mean, I'll agree. It has to suck.
And the thing about it is I think where she's coming from is you're also here at the bottom. You're at an information deficit than everybody else because you're at the bottom. So like that's your perspective.
From her perspective, she doesn't, and we'll get to this in a little bit, but she doesn't think she's at an information deficit. She thinks she has all the information based on what she's been tweeting. But in reality, you're right. She's in an information deficit.
But that's good Survivor, where it's kind of like when I was vote out my season, where the person comes up to me and is like, hey, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yo, you tried to vote me out. The people you tried to vote out came and told me that you were trying to vote me out, right? Like before you even came up here and talked to me. Like, so from an information standpoint, when you're communicating, like you have to assume or try to assume where the information is situated. And that is like very tough when people are deliberately keeping you out of the information. Now, with that being said, understanding you want to fight the hierarchy because it seems so finite. But it isn't. Like there is no finite alliance in Survivor. The Reba 4 had a crack. You know, You know, so even that's the tightest alliance in the area. The Tika 3. I mean, they didn't have a crack, but they had pressure. Maybe there would have been one. But there aren't these big, long-standing alliances in the new era. They have never lasted. They have never happened. And even when they have, even last year, they could have probably sent D home and had a chance to do something else at the end. At the end of the day, you can bank on the big alliance collapsing and crumbling. At the beginning of the merge, it's hard to be patient because people want to have agency. And the question is, can you do a jam and say, and your game is at risk? He could have went home to the switch armor. Like, can I rely on relationships and and not necessarily be the puppeteer or the move maker, right? Or the move, and can I then take that, not taking that heat, and use that to propel my game forward to the end? Which I think in this era of Survivor, I feel like D winning has been the anomaly of the new era. Meaning you have an alliance and you went to the end with them. That's the way I wanted to play. That's the way
I mean, Jam Jam did the same thing.
However, from a power standpoint, people knew D had power going into the merge.
Right.
People discounted Jam Jam.
Yes.
Discounted his social relationship. Discounted Jam Jam. Discounted Carolyn. Discounted Carson for various different reasons. Carolyn's emotional. Carson is small, and Jam is his boisterous personality person who may not be in the quote unquote best shape. Right. So you had three people who you had reasons to look at compared to other people like, oh, like XYZ. You know, they're this. So from an agency standpoint, being able to understand that having agency necessarily isn't the best thing. It may be the funnest thing. It may be it may be what you want, but sometimes not having what you want is better. Like, would I rather have played the game with people perceiving I had agency versus not? If the goal is to win the game, I want people not to perceive that I have agency.
Right.
Until the end, when you do want, and that's where that fine line is drawn.
But that's apparent at Ponderosa. When people go to Ponderosa, that's the thing you don't know when you're playing is that most is revealed and you understand like, oh, you had real conversations there. It's like, well, they said they did this, but you ain't do that. Those conversations happen.
Yeah.
It's like,
oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I just say that to say, from a rule standpoint, appendicing, having agency versus not having agency, it's funner to have agency, but it may not be the best thing. And sometimes not having agency is a blessing because people don't see where you're coming from.
Right. Right. Getting back to Venus's tweets, in the first one that she mentioned, or that I mentioned, she questioned, if you think that I should have kept her mouth shut. Well, yeah, Venus, I do. Sorry. She was told it was her or Moriah. Overplaying at that point could have turned things around on her, usually would have. And her idea to target Charlie was never going to work. She did her best to turn this into the Why Venus Lost podcast. And
only thing, right?
Yeah.
It should have worked for Yanu. Like literally, it should have worked for Yanu. Like at the end of the day, sometimes war is good. Like it's because I only say this because everything that's under the surface is like a facade because everybody is a good player. Like everybody's pretending to be friends. Like it's one of your rules: pretend to be friends.
Right.
But however, you need war. War is good. You have to make choices.
But if you know a rock draw is coming that's going to split the groups, and you could end up with anyone, then you don't want to be at war with anyone at that point.
True, but they're still at war with you. Like this is like one of the things I go
back but
like so it's like so like formally, right? I can try to play nice, and maybe I'm internalizing, right? I can try to play nice, right? But no matter how nice I am, right? Like I get like love Janine, like I love Janine. Janine's like my baby sister, love her to death, right? Had a great conversation. It's cold and I got the fire. I give Janine my shirt on the beach, so she's warm. Jess, out there giving up clothing.
Oh my God, it's a big deal.
Yeah, so I give her my shirt, like, yo, I'm warm, I'm good. Here you go. I know you. Boom, boom, boom. You know what I'm saying? She's still trying to vote me out. She's like, she's like, yo, you gotta go. And at the same time, you have to understand, like, no matter how nice you are, the war is still there.
Right. It's just a cold war.
It's the cold war. So you have to sometimes say, regardless of if I'm playing nice now, if these people consider me a threat and I go into this swap as a merge, right?
Yeah.
It's still war, right? So I feel like that is the hidden part about it that's tough. And it's risky, but it's not really risky. Like if you were in power, you have to take the most, you have to be deep. Keep your foot on the pedal. You're taking out Kayla, you're taking out Kelly. Anybody that can make a vote, you're trying to take those people out because you are in power. And that's what you have to do. And risk the split. You have to. If you're in that power position, you have to take the most damaging person off the board and risk that war if you want to go far, if you're in position. This vote is a mistake for somebody. We don't know yet, but it will be.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, and we've talked about this before, and other people like Taron Armstrong certainly has talked about it for Big Brother as well. And when producers put in these twists, they think it's livening things up, but it's really making players contract and play more conservatively.
Yeah.
Because if they didn't know there was going to be this split tribal coming up, they might have been more willing to start the war now.
Right.
And you would have had something that was more exciting and interesting happen, possibly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But because they know this is coming and they have to keep themselves a little safer, then they're not willing to make those moves. So Jeff says you got to make big moves, but he makes production decisions that work against making big moves.
Yeah, I think one of the secret scenes, Tiffany was actually talking about how she couldn't wait to get past this so then they could start really playing the game. And it's like, just let them play. You know, just let them play. They will play. They will play.
Yeah.
That split tribal at the merge, like you're just building relationships. And like, you know, like it is like you, if you want people to play, like, yo, we are at the merge, we're voting people off. Yeah. Like, this is what we are doing. Like, we're not like that split, like knowing that split's coming is so dead to the game when you're playing the game. And it's hard to see, like, it's very tough when you're outside to say F the split and keep going because you can't actually say F the split. Like, like I want to say the strategy I said is the right thing to do, start the war. In my head, though, I'm trying to build every ally I can for the split. But I think starting the war is better television. And it's better just like
it's better television, but and you know, related to this, somewhat related to this, Stephen Fishback said on Twitter and also on Know It Alls that the frustrating thing about the Survivor Mergeatory is that Venus was right. She was right. She was right. Yeah, she shouldn't just gratefully go along with the vote while the self-anointed power players generously spare her until the next week. And then he continued, in a pre-41 season, that would be bad gameplay, and she would have wiggle room to do something about it. But because over half the tribe is immune, she is tactically forced to go along with the plan that 7 totally safe people legislate from on high because the risk of making waves is too great. The time frame is too short, and the possible targets are too limited. Now, Venus, quote, tweeted this with a thank you. But I have to say, I don't think she quite understood exactly what he was saying, because he wasn't saying that what she did was right. What he was saying was if this had been a pre-New Era season, what she did would have been right.
Right.
But it's not now. And, you know, and then Venus herself tweeted, I'm never going to be the player that sits quietly with a stupid grin and plays dumb. If your strategy is bad, I will tell you. If you think that's bad gameplay, then don't watch. So I'll say it. Yes, that's bad gameplay. And no, I'm not going to stop watching because I'm sorry, Venus, you're not the only reason that we're watching. Discussing good and bad gameplay is kind of what we do here. And, you know, you might even say, if your strategy is bad, I will tell you. That's something she should be familiar with since she said it in that tweet. In this case, she did not get punished.
Venus. He'll tell you.
Yes. She did not get punished for that bad strategy by being voted out yet. But again,
she was rewarded for it.
Right. She was.
They didn't see it as a threat.
It was more due to the other issues that we've discussed.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
I think.
Sorry, Jess, go for it.
Oh no, that's okay. I just find it fascinating that, like, I understand the dynamics of it all and the desire to stir the pot and make things happen. But because of the way that production has created this mergeatory, it really does cut people at the knees. And it drives me crazy. Like, I just feel like go back to an actual merge, because do you want 7 people controlling the vote? You do. But do you want CBS or production deciding who those 7 people are? No, let the players
they're not
decide.
deciding. I just want to,
they're not Rocks deciding. Did. Excuse me. The Rocks did.
Yes.
But that's what I mean. Like, let the people figure out who is going to be the majority and who's going to be in control.
Right.
Hey, I'm mad they got a freaking puzzle. We got a word puzzle. We were up by like 45 minutes. Like if we got an actual regular puzzle, we would have actually won. Like, there's so much stuff where seasons where there's so much PTSD where you're like, there's so many little things that can happen.
All right.
There's so many little things that happen in the Survivor season when you're a player, where you're just like, you just want as much agency as possible as a player. Like that's just all you want, like as much agency as possible as a player.
Well,
like,
and that's, I mean, and that's, another Venus thing here. She tweeted, speaking of agency, she tweeted that it wasn't luck. She made the necessary moves / promises to the right people to guarantee her spot in the merge. I'm sorry, Venus. I just don't think so. We did not see that. Her standing in the game is such that I don't think anyone would care about promises from or to her. It's very possible and likely that people told her they were keeping her for whatever reasons, but that doesn't make it so. It goes back to what you were saying, James. Yeah, that's good gameplay on their part. If she feels so strongly about this, good on them. And it comes back to perspectives. And this goes back to why, way back almost 2 hours ago when I mentioned the tweet about Charlie voting for her, because it shows she has her perspective, but that does not make it objectively correct based on all of what was going on.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, and I actually like the fact that the survivors are actually expressing how they voted and how they wanted to vote.
Yeah.
I wish I did and could have and all the other stuff. So I feel like these speeches. Yes, I wish I got my torch too. I would be quiet about that.
Yeah.
Like for I didn't, but I digress. It's good to see because I feel like the one thing that with at least the people that are super duper fans and super into it is that you want an accurate portrayal of the time out there from your perspective, but also just like what actually happened. And sometimes you're learning things for the first time, depending on your cast and what's communicated. But also, you just want it to be how it feels. Like you want the episode to say, "Yo, like this makes sense," and and I want to say. And that's why I say I feel for Venus only because I never was at the bottom for a long time.
Right.
I was at the bottom for 2 hours. I didn't know it. So like I like that. Like that's a different feeling, and you are giving up so much to play the game. So you just want a quote unquote accurate portrayal as the way you see it, and sometimes the way you see it isn't the way it was, and that's
right. Oh yeah, for sure.
And but in this case, I feel like it's tough. It's tough to be in her position. I'm not writing her off as much as you have yet, Dave, only because I feel like I'm from a season where I feel like anybody can win.
However, understandable.
And I don't think she's going home next with the split where I feel like people are going to try to take shots. So we'll get there and
we'll get to the predictions. Yeah.
I'll be quiet now.
Yeah, but and I mean, I know we've spent a lot of time talking about Venus, and people may be like, why did you spend so much time talking about Venus in the Why Moriah Lost podcast? Well, because this appendix is about what the rest of the tribe should have done, and Venus is saying this is what you should have done. So I think we need to address that. And of course, Venus was part of the rest of the tribe and was the main other option. But
I agree with Venus. I feel like Charlie was the move about Yanu. Like literally, if you say, "Yo, Siga, who do you want out?" We want this person out, and I just feel like any other person is the move other than the people that people want out, and you have to go there and figure it out from there. You break out whatever you can break up and go from there. Like you don't keep things status quo. But that's
the problem. The problem, I think, is that there is no Yanu by itself. There's the Journey 6 also. Yeah. And I think Q is the one who brought it up. Q, I think it matters 5. More to,
Maria, it's like the Journey 5.5.
Well, right.
Like,
yeah.
Maria is like, thank you for this. Maria's like, thank you for this alliance that I didn't know. She did the perfect thing. She was like, oh, Tim did not tell me this. However, yes, thank you. I will be on the recipient.
Right.
I appreciate the protection. Thank you.
Yeah. But I mean, from Q's perspective, he wants this alliance to succeed and therefore doesn't want to piss off the people in that alliance. And if Tim and Maria don't want Charlie gone, and they didn't, then why start already an infighting there?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so, so that's where all these intertwined things come into play. And, but I really think the main issue for Moriah in this appendix was something she described to Dalton Ross, where she said, ultimately, mergeatory is such a tidal wave. And once 7 people start piling on and then 3 more join, it's just not worth it to sink your game. Worth it for the other people, of course. And yeah, those people all came to a decision. We discussed earlier how difficult it was to try to get them back together to rediscuss it. And this, that was another reason Venus's move to try to vote out Charlie was never going to work. But it was also a reason she didn't get herself voted out while trying. Once those 7 had spoken, everyone else had to fall in line or risk putting themselves in imminent danger for the upcoming votes. And so it was kind of, like she said, it was a tidal wave.
And I think underestimated was Tevin's extra vote that solidified that there was 7, because Hunter did lose a vote, so it could have been a 6-6 situation. But it's all these little things add up.
Right.
Tevin got an extra vote for Jelinski. I'm helping out the tribe, and clearly maybe he did. We heard somebody, but someone got an extra vote, and instead of it being a possible 6-6 or whatever, I have extra votes. So now we're really 7. So it's kind of like when Ryan tried this, it was almost successful. A 7 to the end, at the mergeatory piece. So it's not a set in stone thing. Let's just it's not a set in stone thing, but certain things make it a set in stone thing.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, it is about time to wrap things up. So, James, what are your final thoughts on Moriah?
I picked her to be my winner pick on Tyson's podcast when I was on it.
Oh my gosh, look at that.
Yeah, I don't think that she did anything that was super detrimental to her game, right? But I also don't think that she did anything that was a super affirmative to your game too. And I feel like it's tough when you aren't. I feel like it's a tough game to play when it's a different level of toughness to play the game and not go to tribal. Than it is to play the game and go to tribal. I don't think that Yanu had any hard votes. I feel like they went to tribal, right? It was bad, but their votes weren't texting from the core 3 knew they were the core 3 from the beginning. They decided that with Jelinski. They lost again. They're like, Jess, they lost again. That was decided from the core 3, and because they didn't have that last vote, they get to play hunky dory. So I don't think there have been any hard votes this season, right? So this is the actual first vote for everybody. Everybody wants to actually be safe. So I feel like Mo just came up into this, this patch of, and let me not discount the Siga vote for Jim. I feel like that was a consensus easy vote for them, even though it may not be easy, but I think it was the easy vote for whatever the 4 was in that power alliance. And I feel like it's tough when you don't have your tribal counterpoint. You don't have your scrambling playing wheels where she where you haven't scrambled, you haven't been a tribal, you haven't so I feel like it was a tough situation. I feel like she did what most people should do in these situations, except I just don't know if she had the bonds and the people that went to the mattress for her. And I think that was the hardest part, where you needed somebody on that power side, and that's why you have to to go to the mattresses for her as your number 1. You have to try to find that number 1 if it's your tribe, someone else's tribe, and if you don't have that number 1, right, then you're playing a sinking ship, and the only person to win without one is Gabriel, probably.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Listen, I love that you ended with Gabler. That's great.
These are facts. And here's the, I love Gabler, and Gabler played a phenomenal game. It's just he literally navigated without having a number one. Like Mary
Sure.
Ann played with Omer. You had Erica playing with Heather. You had Cabler playing with everybody, right? Then you have Jam that played with the Tika 3. You had Tita play with the Reba. So I'm just saying stuff that's like literally historically facts for the new era. Like it's not anything
I'm
personal.
not discounting it.
Oh yeah, I know y'all. I'm to the listeners. I'm just like,
Yeah.
listeners, I'm just telling you, this is how the game is played now. You need to find someone that is your person 99% of the time. This lone wolf stuff doesn't work.
Yeah.
From the top. This is what it is.
I do think that Moriah from the beginning really did. I had a very interesting take on her, and I was very curious to see how she was going to do in this game. She intrigued me immediately in her pre-game interviews because I felt like she came across as someone who was very well-rounded, someone who was grounded as well, had a good idea of what she wanted the game to consist of and how she wanted to play it. But she was also a bit of a wild card. One of the things that I thought was fascinating is that she described her favorite hobbies as beer brewing, surfing, and Dungeons and Dragons. If that doesn't give you like such a wide swath of like who a person is, I don't know what does. I mean, my gosh, how are those three things what you're doing? I mean, it's like they are so crazy different, and I don't play Dungeons and Dragons, but I can't imagine that it really relates very much to surfing or beer brewing, but maybe I'm wrong. But I don't think beer brewing and surfing necessarily relate to each other either. So I feel like Moriah has a lot of skills and has a lot of quirkiness about her. And so I feel like she came into this game with like, she's either going to like go all the way because she's going to be able to draw on all of those different components of herself and then do really well in the game, or she isn't going to have a focus and like one point of her that's going to be the best part of her game. And I feel like that's the Moriah that we ended up with, is that she had a lot of structure, but there wasn't one thing that she really wanted to focus on in the game, which is why she didn't know who her number one was. She didn't know who her person was. She had a lot of feelers out and she had a group. I'm part of the Charlie's Angels, but Charlie doesn't want to strategize with me. So that's a red flag. So I feel like she really didn't know where to put all of her energy, and she kind of let it all, it was like it was too many tentacles, too extended, and then kind of hoping that it was all going to come in and it was all going to work for her. When she found herself in a really, really tough spot, when she knew she was being voted for, she knew that the 7 had dropped her name, she knew that it was it, she was going to play her shot in the dark. That's when she should have said, hold up, I'm cutting ties with these people that are throwing me under the bus, and I'm going to tell you what's really going on. But she waited and she held on to it and she tried to do it later. And so I feel like the ideas are there. She had a really good structure and the way she wanted to play the game, but she didn't know how to focus her energy and attention on that one thing at the correct moment, at the correct time. So I was really hoping that Mo was going to do great. I was really intrigued with her at the beginning because I didn't know how she was going to end up playing this game. And unfortunately, Mo was seen as the strategist and seen as this incredible player. And we've said it before, perception is reality. And also when you want to divide and conquer, you want to take out the people that don't look like you and don't seem like you and don't act like you. And Mo was someone who was not like the majority, which was the strong Herculean type individuals because of the damn rock draw. So Mo suffered for a rock draw and she suffered for perception and she tried to play the game, but unfortunately she just didn't like hone her skills enough, I think, and that was why I ended up going home.
Yeah, I really think that Siga had the best of intentions by acting like they were all fully solid and suggesting to Moriah that she not mention how she was on the outs at the previous vote. Tim and Ben tried to protect that appearance and not give her up until they were pushed into it, but they weren't going to risk their own games over it, and it backfired on them, more specifically on Moriah, for a number of reasons. The main one is they thought Yanu would want to side with a solid group rather than one with a bunch of infighting. However, everyone else agreed that they didn't want an apparently tight group of 5 to move forward while everyone else was in 2s and 3s. On top of that, word had already spread that Moriah was strategic and could pose a threat. We discussed the various reasons, some potentially valid, some not, But the point is that perception grew. Someone who could gather allies was more dangerous than someone like Venus, who had none and didn't even seem to have the potential to gain any because she'd managed to alienate so many people. I, of course, know that's not the way she views things, but it's what other people think that matters more in this case. And that view saved her for now by making her seem like less of a threat than Moriah. Once the determination was made, it was very difficult to change. I still say, much as you already did, Jessica, and we discussed earlier, that Moriah should have tried presenting the information about her being on the outs sooner. Maybe it wouldn't have worked, but maybe it would have, especially with the way Venus was raising a ruckus as well. Her shot in the dark only had a 16.7% chance of working, and she played that. So why not play something else, even if it only had a small chance?
Mm-hmm.
We'll never know if it might have worked. Going with the odds, probably not, which really means Moriah's path to this point, as I said earlier, started back on Siga when she was outmaneuvered and left hanging by everyone else. And then even when they tried to appear together, all of Siga was itself outmaneuvered because they didn't properly read the situation. Moriah was the one who paid the price, and that is why Moriah lost.
Sorry, your winner pick is gone, James.
Yeah.
Mine's actually still in the game.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Like, so what happens if 6 people play shots in the dark? Can you give away your safety? Don't like. I wonder, could you like get safe, give away your safety, and someone vote for somebody else?
Can you give
It'd
away?
be crazy.
No, I think it's only. I think shot in the dark is only for you. You could give away your shot in the dark, but once it's pulled, you can't. As far as I know.
Wait, you can pass your shot in the dark off to someone?
Yeah, they did it last season. Remember?
So did someone play 6 shots in the dark?
Nobody has ever. They've never played more than a couple.
But I mean, like, if you gave someone 6 shots in the dark, 6 people don't vote.
Oh, no. You could still only play as many votes as you have. So you trade it for your vote.
Oh, all right. I mean,
but if you
let's just do away with it. It's too confusing.
If you play it at tribal council and someone gives you another one, you could play it again, and
that's the part where I was like, wait, can we get 6? I would love to see 6 people play it. They give it to the right person, and then like the person on the majority vote 1 vote, and like get somebody out, and like 6 people don't vote. Like, let's just ratchet it up to 10,000 if we're going to.
Well, but the problem at a merge is that there are actually 12 scrolls in there, so there's 2 safe and 10 non-safe to make the 1 in 6 chance. So it's possible 6 people could play, and all of them could be not safe. At this large thing, once it gets smaller, it's down to just 6 scrolls. But at the large group, they actually use 12 scrolls.
That's like great thinking on top of your head, because I was not that deep into the thought process. Yeah. So like that's why you're David Bloomberg, and I am. that is why that happens. I hey, thank you for having me on the podcast. This has been a long time coming, but a great time coming. Like this has been so much fun.
It is. Thank you. And we still have more to go. People may think, oh, okay, you're done, because they're saying thank you. No, we still got more. And we still have predictions. But before we get to predictions, just a reminder that the rules we discussed are in poster and t-shirt form.
Mm-hmm.
And checklist t-shirt form. So again, go to robhaswebsite.com/yxlostfeed. Now, I know that James, you had mentioned people should wear these shirts in pregame Ponderosa. Now imagine if you guys had all done it on your season, then you and Lindsay and Cassie would have all known, right off the bat, and possibly others in that season too. So
don't let Lindsay hear this, because that's the alliance that that was there. It was very much there. Like, don't do that to Lindsay.
Okay.
You had her on twice, maybe 3 times, and you shouldn't do that to talk about that possibility. And that's not.
Okay, we'll move on.
My villain edit that was very not edited.
Your non-villain edit. Um, so now, other than that, people don't have to send messages by wearing T-shirts. There are other ways people can send messages.
Yes, they can tweet us. Like we've seen so many Survivor tweets as of late. The Survivor tweet universe is blowing up. I am at Jessica Lewis 89 and David is at David Bloomberg. James, what are you at on Twitter?
So I am Jay, the number 2, DA Jones on Twitter, Instagram, and allegedly TikTok, but I don't really do those. But I'm like, but Jay to the Jones, Jay, the number 2, DA Jones. So that's why you can find me on all type of platforms that are relevant.
That's why it was so hard to find you. I didn't find you on Twitter until several episodes in on your season because I was looking for your name.
First off, everybody thought I was a parody account. This is like literally everybody's like, they saw my I didn't know about the Survivor community. I didn't know how deep people just have random accounts with faces on it. So if you saw my account with my face on it and it's like what my bio and everything like that, you're like, is this real James Jones or is this a fake James Jones?
Stan account, yeah.
Yeah, there is a whole inside thing about my whole Facebook profile, my Twitter profile, and my whole thing about it that Maddie, who I love for 44, who love her to death and talks about all the time. So that's a whole topic conversation. You do your research; it's funny.
Yes, yes.
Well, David Bloomberg, there's a lot of places people can find you besides Twitter, which is why you have put it all in a nice little page at your link tree.
Yes.
Ooh. Look, see James trying to read it. Isn't that great? I love that.
Yeah. Yes. You could track me down at linktree/David Bloomberg with a dot before the EE in Linktree in the URL there. As you mentioned, I am also more directly on most text-based social media like Twitter and Blue Skies at David Bloomberg. On video platforms, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram is at David Bloomberg TV. And because Threads is connected to Instagram, I'm at David Bloomberg TV there as well. I have pretty much limited it now to Twitter for text-based, Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky. Things just weren't happening anywhere else. So, but of course, like I said, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, and I've been posting 2 or 3, sometimes more clips per day at the video sites. Of course, there's clips from U.S. Survivor, Amazing Race, Deal or No Deal Island. The Circle is starting up again soon, so I'm sure I'll have stuff from that. And I think there might be another show starting up too. But, whatever it is, if it's interesting or fun, I'll post it there.
That's right. If it's on reality TV, he's going to do a TikTok or 3 about it.
Yes. Or 4 or 5 or 6.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right. Predictions. So next week is the double boot episode where the players will presumably be split up into 2 groups for 2 tribal councils. It's James's favorite. But we have to do this because nothing says merge like splitting up the tribe.
I know.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yes.
I'm going to say something inappropriate.
If the Journey 6 sticks together and Siga sticks together and the Nami Corps sticks together and Yanu sticks together, well, then that leaves Venus hanging. Depending on the outcome of the rock draw for the tribal councils, she could be the very easy consensus. And I know what you've said. I've thought about this before. She is perfect to take to the end.
Yeah.
But I really think they are still in conservative mode. And I think they will go to the split tribal council and one group will have Venus on it and they'll all look at each other and go, well, that's easy.
Yeah.
And so that's my prediction for one of them. Other than that, the only thing we saw really was Tiffany telling Kenzie it's not the Q show. Now, I don't think that means that they're going to turn on Q. I think that means the 2 of them will be separated from Q in the split. And Q will have previously told them, hey, this is how we should vote. And they're like, he's not here. We don't have to listen to him. And that's what that clip is from. But if they are indeed split from Q, I think Kenzie could be in trouble because if you're one of the Journey 6 and the Journey 6 happens to have the majority in that group, well, they know that Q is in the group and Tiffany is his number 1. Who was the person that Q didn't mention? Kenzie. So they could take her out without any other repercussions because literally the only people it would piss off are Q and Tiffany, who are already solid members of the Journey Alliance. So my prediction, Venus and Kenzie.
Those are fascinating.
Not mine.
Go ahead, James. Go ahead.
No, ladies first. I'm a gentleman.
Oh gosh. Well, see, you brought up a very interesting little idea in my brain as I was sitting here looking at all of these things. Liz, she really is like on her own, even though she's part of Nami. Who's her number 1? Who is she with? She doesn't have anyone that she's with. So I feel like Liz is potentially in trouble. And wouldn't it be funny if we had back-to-back Mo and then Liz, and then they could go to Ponderosa together and like share clothes and stuff and switch glasses, and they could really throw people off when they come. They could dress like twins when they come in for like.
No, they're not. They're not on.
Oh,
Journey.
that's right. Gosh darn it. Never mind. I was thinking ahead. But anyway, I think that Liz is in a tough spot just because we haven't seen much of her, and she doesn't have anybody. And I feel like it's going to be the same type of thing with Mo, where no one's fighting for you. And she's going to find herself in, a group of 6, and no one will be fighting for her. And so I feel like Liz is going to be in a tough spot in that situation. And as much as I don't want to, gosh, I got to do the Venus thing too, even though I don't want to, just because I agree with you that in a situation like this, when you've got 6 and 6, and it's like anybody but me, right? And if you don't have anybody that's fighting for you in a group of 6, if it was 12, I'd have a much different thought process on all of this. I wouldn't want to say Venus, because what threat is she to anyone at this point?
Right.
But when you're in a group of 6 and it's like someone's got to go, and you start looking at, well, who am I with, and who do I have with me? And she's not going to have anybody with her. So I'm going to say Venus is my second choice. I'll be wrong though, so it doesn't matter.
Man, I hate the choices I'm about to make. I really hate the choices I'm about to make.
All right, like it. Bring it on.
I think it's going to be Tim and Q.
Wow.
Ooh. Wow.
I feel like when people get to this point, right? If you haven't had too much agency in a vote, right? I think that the players now want to have agency. And this is the biggest vote to have agency when you don't have agency in the larger group.
So you think basically a revolt that the peasants, the people who have been treated as peasants, are going to say, our king is vulnerable, we can take him out now.
Or it's kind of like, if you like, do you see, like, Q already has reservations about Tim, right? A little bit, right? So they're separated, right? Now you're looking at, okay, you only need 3 to 4 votes to make something happen. If you have 4 votes, I feel like we could easily put 4 votes on the Q. If you are a Siga member, you can, at 3 Sigas in the queue, you just need one other person, right?
Yeah.
Easy vote, right? I feel like with regards to, so I feel like Q is also a person that around this time at the merge is where people like Q and Tim go out, where you have these people that you may not feel, okay, if I don't get this person out now, we're not going to get them out. 2, they have been making decisions, and they have been the decision makers on their respective tribes, and other people want to have agency. And then you start thinking, if Q gets out of steam or if Tim gets out of steam, can I beat them at the M? Tim is a family guy. Tim has 2 kids at home. Blah 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 blah. Q, his story. one of, I think, 15 or 16 children, you know, worked up. Like, I don't know how much he shared of his story, right? And also look at the allies. If you have three, you don't have unless your three are super tight, right? You only have two. So Kinsey and Tiff, for Tiff's perspective, right? Tiff and Kinsey and Tiff and Q, it's still 2 votes.
Yeah.
You know, end of the day, I feel like Charlie and Maria, they feel like they're strong too. Ben has nowhere else to go either way, right? You know, at the end of the day, I feel like those 2 people that everybody from Nami can get behind, and Nami still has 4 people, and Venus, as much as she wants to make a move, if you say it's either Tim or Tim or Q, she's going to choose self-preservation, right? You have 1 vote guaranteed. That's a self-preservation vote, right? So all you need is 3 people other. Liz is going to self-preservation vote, which is a guaranteed vote from 2 people that you don't view as threats, right? So you have 2 people you don't view as threats and self-preservation votes.
Yeah.
And you can take out people that are perceived as bigger threats in the big alpha guys, which is the seed that Venus planted, or everybody else also probably see, obviously. So with that being said, I feel like typically the bigger person in any duo or any group is going to be her to take the shot. So I think that's Tim. I think that's Q. I think if they're not on the same tribe, one of them goes home. If they're on the same tribe, then I didn't think it's going to be Venus and Liz. I just hedged my bets, but I feel like it's very succinct on where those 2 end up. And I picked those 2 to go home.
Yeah. I mean, that's
it. I don't want to, but I just feel like that's just where it's going to go.
Yeah. I mean, I do think when Q goes, it will be because, spoiler alert for the eventual why Q lost. I think it will be because he has taken too much control. I just don't see it happening immediately yet. But based on what you're saying, yeah, if people were annoyed by the way this vote went down and they have the opportunity to strike back, it may be their time. I mean, it all comes down to the rock draw. If it's Q, Venus, Soda, Charlie, and Liz and someone else, then yeah, they're probably going to turn on Q.
So let me ask you this question, right? Typically, the person needs to vein. If everybody said this is Yanu's vote, right? Who's the most vocal person from Yanu that we see?
Q.
Yeah.
So whether Q determined the vote or not, right? Like, I'll go back to my season. Sorry, I hate to do that. Do it all the time. Jesse and Cody flipped. I caught the brunt of it, right? Like, that's the narrative, right? So no matter what happens, if Q is catching the shrapnel from this vote, people told the vote. Therefore, everybody wasn't happy with that vote. That wasn't a consensus vote. Right. Someone knows the shine of earth, and that's why I say Q.
Yeah,
love Q. Like I'm saying, I feel like that's where people want to have agency. Also, people haven't voted. So if you're on Nami, you didn't have any agency, you didn't get the vote. If you're on Siga, you got to vote out Jim. Like, so people will also want to have agency in the game, right? So that's why I feel like it's a Q Tim thing, and that's just where I'm at.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think it'll depend. I hate to end this way, but it'll depend on the rock draw again.
It really does, which sucks. Yeah. Like I'd rather just say,
I know it sucks.
It's like you have a competition for captains or whatever like that, whatever it is. It could be musical chairs, captains. Yeah. 2 people. Who cares? But give people agency to choose these teams.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
All right. Well, the one thing people do have agency to do, that is to join the RHAP patron program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. You get access to all the special podcasts that are put out just for patrons, plus the Facebook groups and Discord. And of course, you support shows on the network like ours. And so go to robhasawebsite.com/patron and join there. Also, make sure you're subscribed to all the reality TV RHAP-Ups podcasts by going to robhasawebsite.com/RHAP-Ups feed and selecting your podcast service of choice. You'll not only find content like us, obviously, the B&B, Survivor International, also, though, podcasts on a number of other shows like The Amazing Race, which is going on right now, Canadian Big Brother, which is going on right now, and a number of different other shows and topics, all of them on the RHAP-Ups feed. So make sure you go there.
And I would like to thank everyone who is part of the RHAP that you have just heard about all of the incredible content. Thank you to Scott St. Pierre for all of the editing that he does, not only for Why Blank Lost, but all of the content that you've just heard. Rob Cesternino puts out so much material and so many things that are of just great context and quality and just a range of things. And James is clapping, and he should, because there is so many things available to you as a listener. So you should definitely become a patron. So thank you to everyone from RHAP for all of the things that you do and all of the information and all of the content that is created. And thank you, James, for joining us today. And as we did say, this was a long time coming, and this was a lovely time. So thank you very, very much. Thank you to the listeners for hanging in there for over 2 hours, and we're going to be over 40 minutes. So thank you for listening. I hope it was well worth it for you. We do appreciate the support.
Oh yes, I think you did. We'll have to go back and check. But yes.
Wait, we had a 3 hour though once, didn't we? I think
I feel like that was Carson, or
no, I think that was Adam. I think it was 3 hours.
Well,
with Adam.
okay, well,
but yes, but James, you're right up there. So thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. This is a good time. David, as always, I appreciate you, and you make me come back and do this all the time, and I love to be here with you. So this was lovely. Sorry, Mo, that we had to talk about you though.
Yeah, and sorry, Venus. And Venus, because we talked a lot about her. But at least Venus is still in the game, whereas Mo doesn't have that. Yes, thank you also for me, James. I'm so glad we're finally able to get our schedules to match up, and it ended up being great timing to discuss this in mergeatory. If we had, so with the whole discussion of threats, it all came together really well. So finally, at least it worked out well. Thank you, of course, Jessica, for another great episode. We will see everyone in a week for a double episode. And of course, people can find us online between now and then and see what we have to say on Twitter and some of these other places. Until then, bye, everyone.
Bye.